2, 1.
All right, and we're live.
How exciting.
Yeah. All right.
So we're going to be watching the GOP debate and kind of reacting to it like we're teenagers. I mean, we are teenagers, but kind of get the gist. Eric over here, you want to explain what's going on?
So, I'll be acting as the Democrat, and Corey will be playing devil's advocate and acting as the Republican.
So yeah, we're gonna kind of talk about the debate, make a couple jokes here and there, but also kind of talk, critique the ideologies that the candidates are supporting and what they're saying, based on two possible parties. Because obviously, like if I'm advocating for Republican, I'll have a certain logical view on pro-life, whereas he's gonna have a very different view on, abortion rights. So that's the kind of way how this is gonna go down. Let's get the show on the road.
All right.
Good evening and welcome to the historic Milwaukee Theater. Tonight, you'll hear from 12 Republican candidates vying to become the next president of the United States. I'm Trish Regan, along with my co-moderator Sandra Smith, and from the Wall Street Journal, Jerry Seid.
This evening, Fox Business is partnering with the Wall Street Journal to bring you the fourth Republican presidential debate of the 2016 campaign. For the next hour, 4 of the candidates will be here answering the questions voters want answered.
Let's introduce them, the New Jersey Governor, Chris Christie.
I like how Chris Christie's chin gets like an inch smaller.
Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. Former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum.
No, I haven't seen one of these candidates they look like before.
Really?
Yeah, but I've heard all their names.
Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal.
I haven't heard of him, and that's surprising.
Oh wait.
All right, this debate will last 1 hour. Each candidate.
Wait, there's only 4 candidates.
This is the boring debate. There's all the debaters that
when your time is
went
up,
down
you're
the
gonna hear this
polls.
bell.
Let's just skip ahead to the one
that's
that
it. So let's begin with Governor Christie.
Because I don't want to watch Chris Christie versus Rick Santorum.
Yeah, I need Donald Trump.
No, it's gonna be like try going to part 5 or something.
Every manufacturer, I go to one every single.
Oh, there were a couple debates at once.
Well, they do one earlier, and then the ones with the higher poll rates come later. Try skipping ahead.
It's a long ad.
So I think this is the beginning of the second one.
People have joined. Tonight, we are partnering with the Wall Street Journal to ask questions on the economy that voters want to answer.
So that's good. We don't have to watch 3 hours worth of footage. We don't have to watch like an hour and a half.
Since the first Republican debate, more than 58 million people have joined the political conversation online.
Yeah.
More than 9
My mom's
million
probably one of
are
those 9
talking
million.
specifically
No
about the
teenager uses
economy.
Facebook anymore.
Candidates on stage tonight were selected based on their standing in an average of 4
Donald
national
Trump and
polls.
Bernie Sanders know that.
Those
That's why they use
standings
Twitter.
determining their position on the stage. And here they are. At center stage, businessman Donald Trump.
That is a very serious face that he's having.
Yeah.
To start off with,
It makes me wonder, did he do that on purpose? Was he trying to get that emotion?
Not serious face.
Was he trying to get that emotion out of people? Was it more like, is it just his face?
They're all kind of depressed.
Except him.
Except for Marco Rubio.
Yeah. That'd be me if I was there. He's forcing himself to smile.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush.
I feel like all of them dyed their hair. Like the last time I saw
They definitely all have white hair.
Last time I saw Ted Cruz, he had like black vampire hair that was slicked back.
She's gotta be 65 at least.
What, you think she's that old? I think she looks
young.
young. I think she looks like younger than Hillary.
She looks like she's hiding in face.
You think?
Yeah.
And Kentucky Senator Rand Paul.
I like Rand.
I don't know what to say about him. His hair and jaw.
He looks a little bit like a frog.
Tonight's
Yeah, exactly.
He's a little bit like
90
Pepe.
seconds for each answer. 1 minute for each follow-up response.
Fiore, right?
And if a candidate goes over their allotted time, you'll hear this.
Only in a American debate would we have a British questioner.
It sounds like a game show, but it's not. Anyway,
She's
now I would be
61.
remiss if I did not
not that
acknowledge
old.
the elephant in the
Ben
room.
Carson is 3
and
years
I'm not
older.
talking about
Donald
your
Trump is
party's
69 years
fine
old.
Really?
I'm
This is his
talking
Google.
about the presidents of the United
That's
States,
wow.
the
Hang on.
economy, and what each
I'm gonna
of
pause the
you-
video. Just gonna show this off. It's a
You
beautiful
could try.
picture. Just gonna hold it up to the camera. I hope you guys can see that. I don't know.
Someone used to Photoshop that with his pointer finger being his middle finger. That would make a
alright.
great picture.
to
Alright.
Let's keep
improve,
going.
No more, no less. We are focused on those issues and what you have said on those issues in your words and what your opponents have said in their words about your words. That is the
Wait, what?
agenda tonight.
I don't know.
I have no idea what he
Each of
said.
you
That was
plans
some
to make
lyrical
America
karate.
better tomorrow.
I like his tie.
And
It
so
reminds
we
me of
begin.
like the Killer Cobra.
Candidates,
Oh,
as we
talking about,
gather
like, how
tonight
you go,
in
like,
this very
red,
august
yellow,
theater,
black.
just outside
Oh yeah,
and
actually I do
across
know.
the country, picketers are gathering as well. They're demanding an immediate hike in the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
This is homework.
Just a
math.
few hours ago, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo proposed doing the same for all state workers, the first governor to do so. Mr. Trump, as the leading presidential candidate on this stage,
That's
and one whose
odd.
tax plan
I
exempts couples
I
making up
keep
to
forgetting that he's still ahead in the polls.
$50,000
Yeah,
a year
it's
from
like-
paying any
Like I would have thought
federal
he went
taxes
down by
at
now
all.
after his like
Yeah, you-
vaccination counter.
sympathetic.
You
but-
keep hearing
Protesters
about how he's
calls.
dropping the polls, but he's still so far ahead.
Wage
Exactly.
works out to about $31,000
Like everyone thought it was a joke.
I
still think
can't
it's a
be,
joke.
and
But
the reason I can't be is that we are a country that is being beaten on every front, economically, militarily. There is nothing
true?
that we
Wait,
do now
militarily,
to
that's
win.
not right.
We don't win anymore.
Well,
Our taxes are too
hold on a
high. I've
second.
come up with a tax plan that many people like very much. It's going to be a tremendous plan. I think it'll make our country and our economy very dynamic. But taxes too high, wages too high. We're not going to be able to compete against the world. I hate to say it, but we have to leave it the way it is. People have to go out, they have to work really hard, and they have to get into that upper stratum. But we cannot do this if we are going to compete with the rest of the world. We just can't do it.
so the question
do
was, would
not
you raise the
raise
minimum
the
wage?
I would not raise the minimum.
He's saying that he would not raise the
Dr.
minimum.
Carson,
you gotta get out
you
work.
have
he
long-
even said at one point in that he said taxes are too high and wages
Dr.
too
Carson,
high.
you have long bemoaned this lackluster recovery, and this Facebook map shows that Americans share your concern. The green represents how the jobs issue is resonating all across this nation, especially here in the state of Wisconsin. You suggested one minimum wage does not fit all, and that perhaps we should offer a lower or starter wage for young people. Those protesters
Is Wisconsin one of
outside
those swing states?
are looking for $15 and nothing
yeah.
less.
Is that why they have it there?
Where are you?
I mean,
Well,
it's
first
just.
of all,
if I were the
delighted to
head,
be here. My family's here, and my little granddaughter, who's 3 years old, said she wanted to come to the debate.
Pathos.
So this is very cool.
Pathos.
As far as
Straight
the minimum
pathos.
wage is concerned, people need to be educated on the minimum wage. Every time we raise the minimum wage, the number of jobless people increases. It's particularly a problem in the black community. Only 19.8% of black teenagers have a job. We're looking for one. You know, that's because of those high wages. If you lower those wages, that comes down. You know, I can remember as a youngster, you know, my first job working in a laboratory as a lab assistant and multiple other jobs. But I would not have gotten those jobs if someone had to pay me a large amount of money. But what I did gain from those jobs is a tremendous amount of experience and how to operate in the world, and how to relate to different people, and how to become a responsible individual. And that's what gave me what I needed to ascend the ladder of opportunity in this country. That's what we need to be thinking about. How do we allow
That's a good
people to
point.
ascend the
Yeah,
ladder
you
of
have-
opportunity rather than
You have
how do we give
low
them everything
wage,
and
but
keep them
good
dependent?
experience jobs. That's better than having
High wages, low
experience. But then, but the hard part with his
So,
statement
sir,
is that
just to be
he's talking
clear,
about a lab,
you would
like,
not
you
raise
know,
it?
I doubt
Yeah,
a
most
lot
people
of,
aren't hitting that.
yeah, I doubt a lot of, you
Raise
know, African American individuals, like they
specifically
wouldn't be right next
because
to a
I'm
science
interested
laboratory.
in making sure
Most
that
time it's
people
gonna
are
be
able to enter the job
McDonald's or
market
a,
and take advantage of opportunities.
Maybe we should change. Maybe instead of having a set
Senator
minimum wage, we have a
Rubio,
minimum
you
wage
called the recent
set for
Democratic
each
debate in Las Vegas a
field.
night of giveaways.
I don't know. It's a
Free
very
healthcare,
complicated
free
thing.
college,
I mean, like,
and a host of other
I can
government
see
paid
why
benefits.
people would say that we
Since you
shouldn't
aren't a
raise the
fan of
minimum
all
wage,
they're
but I also
giving
see why
away,
you definitely should.
tell us tonight
It's
what
kind
you
of
would
hard.
take back.
Well, let me begin by answering both the first question and this one, because they're related. As I've said many times before, my parents were never rich people. My father was a bartender, my mother was a maid. They worked for a living, but they were successful people. Because despite the fact that they weren't well educated and had those jobs, they made enough money to buy a home in a safe and stable neighborhood, retire with dignity, leave all four of their children better off than themselves. We call that the American dream, but in fact it's a universal dream of a better life that people have all over the world. It is a reminder that every country in the world has rich people. What makes America special is that we have millions and millions of people that are not rich, that through hard work and perseverance are able to be successful. The problem is that today people are not successful working hard as ever because the economy is not providing jobs that pay enough. If I thought that raising the minimum wage was the best way to help people increase their pay, I would be all for it, but it isn't. In the 21st century, it's a disaster. If you raise the minimum wage, you're going to make people more expensive than a machine. And that means all this automation that's replacing jobs and people right now is only going to be accelerated. Here's the best way to raise wages. Make America the best place in the world to start a business or expand an existing business. Tax reform and regulatory reform. Bring our debt under control. Fully utilize our energy resources so we can reinvigorate manufacturing. Repeal and replace Obamacare. And make higher education faster and easier to access, especially vocational training. For the life of me, I don't know why we have stigmatized vocational education.
That doesn't mean it's
going
going
to
to replace robots. Because the robot's
We
basically
need
a
more
slave.
welders
It's
and
free.
less philosophers.
Yeah.
I'm saying once you buy it, a robot's not going to complain about its wage.
Yeah.
And if we
That's
do
why I
this-
kind of see the quantum argument. Like,
If we do this, we will be able to increase wages for millions of Americans, and we will be able to leave everyone better off without making anyone worse off.
Thank you, Senator Rubio.
Yeah, robots probably would be cheaper in every occupation.
We've asked people on Facebook to
These are
submit
some
their
things that
questions to the
involve,
candidates.
you know,
Seth
critical
Bell
thinking.
wrote, "We are approaching $20 trillion in national debt. Specifically, what plans do you have
What a nice
to
looking
cut
picture.
federal spending?"
This guy's like the proud
We've spoken
American
much about
asking
your
this question. Like,
success
he got his wife, he got the belt
in
buckle,
balancing the budget
now
under
he's in the
President
background.
Clinton.
Like,
Today, the national debt is
The
at
picture was
record
definitely
highs
taken from
and
Facebook.
growing
oh,
unsustainably.
definitely. That was definitely a Facebook
Interest
picture.
will be the fastest growing part of the federal budget,
was definitely
tripling
his
over the
profile
next
picture.
10 years.
what
Social
was the
Security, the lifeline
How
of
would you
millions of
cut
American
our $20
seniors,
trillion
is
national
rushing
debt?
toward insolvency.
What specific
With
plans
all
do
of
you
the
have?
tax plans presented
So
Wait,
tonight,
who's he?
estimated
John
to cost
Kasich.
anywhere
His
between
claim to
$2
fame
and
is that he said in
$12
the first
trillion
debate that
over
he
a
went to a gay
decade.
person's wedding.
What
And then
specific
people were like,
steps will you
oh,
take to
I
balance
remember,
the
What is
I remember
this?
hearing that, yeah.
what is
First
this,
of all,
a
let me just say
moderate
that,
Republican?
in the
What?
state of
Like,
Ohio, not the only acting executive
But he's
on,
actually
on
not
the stage today,
extremely
we do have a moderate increase in the minimum
but
wage.
that's a
And
whole
I got
other
to tell
thing.
you, my father carried mail on his back. His father was a coal miner. He died of black lung.
And
He
his
was
father,
losing his
he was on a
eyesight.
ship.
My mother's mother lived with us. She could barely speak English. I come from a town where if the wind blew the wrong way, people found themselves out of work. And economic theory is fine, but you know what? People need help. Now, I have a plan that in fact would cut taxes, but not 11 or 12 trillion dollars, that would put my children further in debt. I have a plan that would not only cut taxes, lower the income tax rate for individuals, lower the tax for businesses so businesses will compete here and not move operations overseas, and also a plan, the only plan of anybody standing on this stage to get us to a balanced budget by the end of a second term. And, you know, the simple fact of the matter is we hear a lot of promises in this debate, a lot of promises about these tax cuts or tax schemes sometimes that I call them. Hillary and the Democrats promise everything on the spending side. We've got to be responsible about what we propose on the tax side. Yes, lower taxes, lower spending. My website, johnkasich.com, will show you exactly how we balance the budget. I balanced the budget in Washington as a chief architect, and I have balanced it in Ohio for one reason. When you balance the budget and you cut taxes, people get work. And our most important moral purpose as leaders in the political system is to make sure we create an environment for job creation so people can live their dreams and realize their God-given potential. That's why it's so important. And for those at the bottom, we've got to do what we can to train them so they can move up. But to just look the other way is not acceptable, because you know what? As the governor of Ohio, I have to deal with real challenges, and we've gotten it done in our state, and I will do it for America.
Did you want to name any specific steps, sir?
Yeah, it wasn't very specific, but
Yeah, he said to go to my website. We're watching this, so we don't go to his website. He needs so much time.
5% growth.
Given
And I have a whole series of ways to do that. In Ohio,
also,
we
take a
reduced
shot for the
Medicaid funding
first
for the
Hillary
poor
Clinton
from
circle
10%
jerk.
to 2.5%. Didn't cut one benefit.
Eric, so every
or
time
didn't
they
take
say
anybody off
Hillary
the
Clinton
rolls. Why?
or
Because we're
Ronald Reagan,
innovators.
just go
I've
like
been an
this.
innovator
Right?
my entire
Just take a
career,
drink of your
and
water,
I really
like a
don't care
shot.
what special interests or lobbyists have.
That's what
to
happens
say.
with
I
these
have a
GOP
job
debates. They're
to
just
do
like,
when I
Ronald
take
Reagan,
over
like,
a public
yeah, Ronald
office.
Reagan was
Now,
great
we
and all,
freeze
but
non-defense
oh my God,
discretionary
it's
for
like, they'll
8
be like,
years. We also
you
put an
think
increase in
they
defense
had a
spending.
religion
Our
around him or
tax cuts
something? Like,
balance out, and at the end of the day, we will get to a balanced budget. And I want everybody here to know, when I was budget committee chairman in Washington, I stepped on every toe in that town, and we got to a balanced budget, and we had enormous job
Washington
growth.
is not a town.
And as governor of Ohio, we went from 350,000 lost jobs to a gain of 347,000 jobs. I'll do it in Washington. I've done it twice. I'll do it thrice for the
they gave
United
him
States
double
of
time. I
America.
didn't hear anything different. Even that face just kind of said like, oh.
Senator Cruz, the International Monetary Fund
Moving on.
recently cut its expectations for economic growth. Many economists expect a recession to hit the U.S. within the next year due to the weakening of manufacturing. The next president will have to deal with it. You say tax reform is a powerful lever to spur economic expansion. You're calling for a 10% income tax and a 16% business tax. What other elements do you need in this plan to actually create jobs?
Well, Maria, it's great to be with you. It's great to be here in Milwaukee. You know, the question you asked really, I think, is the most important question any of us can face, which is how do we get the economy growing? How do we bring back economic growth? Because economic growth is foundational to every other challenge we have. As you rightly know, from 2008 to today, our economy has grown 1.2% a year on average. The Obama economy is a disaster, and the IMF is telling us this is a new normal. It doesn't have to be. If you look at the history of America, there are 3 levers that government has had to facilitate economic growth. The first is tax reform, and as you noted, I have rolled out a bold and simple flat tax, 10% for every American that would produce booming growth and 4.9 million new jobs within a decade. The second element is regulatory reform, pulling back the armies of regulators that have descended like locusts on small businesses. And the third element is sound money. Every time we pursued all 3 of those, whether in the 1920s with Calvin Coolidge, or the 1960s with JFK, or the 1980s with Ronald Reagan, the result has been incredible economic growth. We have done it before, and with leadership, we can do it again.
Thank you, sir.
Excuse me.
Governor Bush.
Yeah. I would like to make a comment. You've already made 2 comments, John. It's my turn.
We have more questions for you, Governor Kasich, coming up. We have more questions for you, Governor Kasich.
I got about 4 minutes last debate. I'm going to get my question right now. I appreciate it, Jeb. I'm all for you. But I want at some point to talk about a value-added tax and $11, $12 trillion tax cuts that will put our kids way deeper in the hole than they have been at this point. So I'd like to talk about it at some point because that's what leadership is.
We will certainly get to that. Governor Bush.
Yeah.
Almost 40% of Americans are without a job and are not looking. Many have given up. That's what the participation rate tells us. You've said your policies will drive the economy back to 4% growth, which we haven't seen since the year 2000. What specific regulations would you change, and how will that lead to jobs and growth?
First of all, we could get to 4% growth. The new normal of 2% puts huge demands on government. The reason why we have structural deficits is that more and more people are relying on government, and the growth that we don't have makes the deficit grow. A 4% growth strategy starts with tax reform. And the proposal that I've laid out is the one the Wall Street Journal editorial board has said is the most pro-growth of all the proposals out there. We eliminate a lot of deductions and cut the rates down, a corporate rate of 20%, which puts us 5% below that of China, and allows us full expensing of investing. It would create an explosion of investment back into this country, creating higher wage jobs. And so that's part of it. On the regulatory side, I think we need to repeal every rule that Barack Obama has in terms of work in progress. Every one of them.
That's like 8
and
years
start
of
over.
work.
For those that are already in existence, the regulation of the internet, we have to start over, but we ought to do that. The Clean Power Act, we ought to repeal that and start over on that. The Waters of the United States Act, which is going to be devastating for agriculture and many industries, we
There have
should
been a lot
repeal
of
that.
laws that
We
tried to
should
get passed,
repeal the
but really didn't
rules
get
because
passed,
the economic
about
costs of this far exceed the
restricting the
social
internet,
benefit.
and there's the
So
whole.
if
he
we're
wants
serious
restricting
about being
Well,
serious
it
about
depends.
high
It's kind of
growth,
confusing because
then we
there was
have to
also the
recognize
NSA
that small businesses
and
right now
shut
more
that
of them are
down.
closing than are
repealing
that are
So he
being
wants
set
to
up.
bring that
Hillary
back
Clinton has said
and then
that
redo
Barack
it.
Obama's policies get an
Hillary
A.
Clinton.
Really? 1 in 10 people right now aren't working or have given up altogether, as you said. That's not an A. 1 in 7 people are living in poverty. That's not an A. 1 in 5 children are on food stamps. That is not an A. It may be the best that Hillary Clinton can do, but it's not the best America can do.
So I like what he said about bringing down the corporate tax, similar to compete with China, but I
Ms.
think the
Fiorina,
whole
while you've all pointed out how weak
8 years of
the
progress
current
thing, I thought that
recovery
was
has
kind
been
of
and how disappointing by any historical standards,
that's,
in the general election, the Democrats will inevitably
that just wastes a
voters
decade
to
of
compare
everyone's
the
life.
recent president's jobs performance. Now, in 7
I
years
mean,
under
maybe he's
President
right,
Obama,
but
the U.S. has added an
No,
average of
every single
170,000 jobs a
everything
month.
like this.
Under President Clinton, the economy added about 240,000 jobs a month. Under George W. Bush, it was only 13,000 a month. If you win the nomination, you'll probably be facing a Democrat named Clinton. How are you going to respond to the claim that Democratic presidents are better at creating jobs than Republicans?
Well, first of all, I must say, as I think about that question, I think about a woman I met the other day. I would guess she was 40 years old. She had several children. And she said to me, "No, Carly, I go to bed every night afraid for my children's future." And that really struck me. This is America. A mother is going to bed afraid for her children's future.
The
And the
stories
reason
never
she's
sound
afraid
real.
for her children's future
They're
is
probably
because
not.
we've had problems for a long time.
No one's gonna ask them
yes,
for
problems have
proof.
gotten much worse under Democrats. But the truth is, this government has been growing bigger and bigger, more corrupt, less effective, crushing the engine of economic growth for a very long time. This isn't about just replacing a Democrat with a Republican now. It's about actually challenging the status quo of big government. Big government has created a big business called politics. And there are lots of people invested in the status quo of that big business called politics. Specifically, we need actually to do 5 things to really get this economy going again. We need to go to zero-based budgeting, so we know where every dollar is being spent. We can challenge any dollar, cut any dollar, move any dollar. We need to actually reform the tax code. Go to a 3-page tax code. Yes, there are
No, as far as I can
that
tell,
will
we're just
reform our tax code to 3
going more and more
pages.
to debt.
In addition to rolling back what President Obama has done, we need to do a top-to-bottom review of every single regulation on the books. That hasn't been done in 50 years. We need to pass the REINS Act so Congress is in charge of regulation, not nameless faceless bureaucrats, accountable to no one. We become a nation of rules, not a nation of laws.
So
and
do they,
finally,
lose points
we
or something?
actually,
How does
yes, have to hold
They
government
just
officials
go ding
accountable for
ding,
their
and
performance.
they kind of say
All this has to be
they
done,
usually
and the
usually
citizens
like
of this nation must
when,
help a
once the
President
candidate usually
Fiorina
hears the ding
get it
ding,
done.
they
We
usually
must
start a
take
run-on
our
sentence that
government
lasts
back.
like 20 seconds and it's just full of mumbo jumbo until eventually the person's like, thank you. Like that's usually how it goes down.
Senator Paul, income inequality has been rising in the United States. 50 years ago, for example, the average CEO of a big corporation in this country earned 20 times the average salary of one of his or her workers. Today, that CEO earns about 300 times the average salary of a worker. Does it matter at all that the gap between the rich and everyone else is widening?
Absolutely, and I think that we ought to look where income inequality seems to be the worst. It seems to be worse in cities run by Democrats, governors and states run by Democrats, and countries currently run by Democrats. So the thing is, let's look for root causes. But I would also lay some blame at the feet of the Federal Reserve. I think the Federal Reserve has made this problem worse. By artificially keeping interest rates below the market rate, average ordinary citizens have a tough time earning interest, have a tough time making money. They're actually talking now about negative interest. The money as it's created through quantitative easing or other means tends to start out in the big banks in New York. And because we're now paying interest for them to keep the money there, much of that money has not filtered out into the economy. So what we're finding is there is increasing income disparity and income inequality. We also find that as the Federal Reserve destroys the value of the currency, what you're finding is that if you're poor, if you make $20,000 a year and you have 3 or 4 kids and you're trying to get by, as your prices rise, or as the value of the dollar shrinks, these are the people that are hurt the worst. So really, we need to re-examine whether we want a Federal Reserve that's involved so much in determining interest rates.
I don't really understand
we also
the
need to
whole,
look at root causes
Federal
as to
Reserve
what caused the
economic. I'm
housing
sure he has
boom
his, like,
and the housing
no, I'm not going to
collapse.
comment.
But the bottom line is, if you want less income inequality, move to a city with a
that is a
Republican
good point
mayor
that
or
he
stay
made.
with a Republican governor.
Yeah, $1 billion, your dollar shrinking by 30%. It's going to make a big deal, but it's not going to be as big of a deal.
Stick around, you're watching Fox News.
Yeah. What's his occupation? What's his occupation?
Oh, what was he before? I think he's a senator of Kentucky, and before that he was an optometrist.
Let's get right back to our questions,
did,
Dr. Carson.
Eye doctor
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
You recently railed against the double standard in the media, sir, that seems obsessed with inconsistencies and potential exaggerations in your life story, but looked the other way when it came to then Senator Barack Obama's. Still, as a candidate whose brand has always been trust, are you worried your campaign, which you've always said, sir, is bigger than you, is now being hurt by it?
Looks like your mom.
Well, first of all, thank you for not asking me what I said in the 10th grade. I appreciate that.
Wait, what?
They said how, like,
I'll
something
just
about
that follow-up.
something about like how you critique the current president.
The fact of the matter is,
just listen.
What we should vet all candidates. I have no problem with being vetted. What I do have a problem with is being lied about, and then putting that out there as.
Oh, they're talking about his biography.
And I don't even mind that so much if they do it with everybody, like people on the other side. But when I look at somebody like Hillary Clinton, who sits there and tells her daughter,
I'm doing it
government official, that no, this was a terrorist attack.
Whoever's watching this, like the 2 people that do, they're gonna like just count the amount of shots we do.
Where I came from, they call that a lie.
I think by this point I'm already theoretically drunk.
Yeah.
I think that's very different from, somebody misinterpreting when I said that I was
Ben Carson is a smart guy, but he was kind of West Point.
That's the words that they use.
He's really calm, but like
his voice might kill his campaign.
That's what people do in those situations. We have to start treating people the same and finding out what people really think and what they're made of. And people who know me know that I'm an honest person.
Would it be a bad thing if we just started playing like straight out of Compton and something in the background?
Why?
Mr. Trump, a federal appeals court just dealt a blow to the Obama administration's plan to prevent the deportation of 5 million people living in this country illegally. The White House is appealing to the Supreme Court. At heart of this issue is the effect that illegal immigrants are having on our economy. What will you do about it?
I was so happy yesterday when I saw that decision come down. That was an unbelievable decision. And we don't have enough of those decisions coming down.
Supreme Court.
He of the executive order, because nobody wants to listen to him, including the Democrats. So he just goes around signing executive orders. That was a great day. And
He is
frankly,
executive.
we have to
Obama's
stop
been doing
illegal
executive
immigration. It's hurting us
in favor of
economically.
illegal
It's
immigrants.
hurting us from
And
every
the Supreme
standpoint.
Court just
It's
ruled
causing tremendous difficulty with respect to
against it.
drugs and what that does to many of our inner cities in particular. And it really was such an unbelievable moment because the courts have not been ruling in our favor. And it was a 2-to-1 decision, and it was a terrific thing that happened. And I will tell you, we are a country of laws. We need borders. We will have a wall. The wall will be built. The wall will be successful. And if you think walls don't work, all you have to do is ask Israel. The wall works. Properly done.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
5 million
The
people
walls
back
work
with
as
no
Israel.
effect on the
You're
economy.
going to have to bring people. You're going to have to send people out. Look,
So
we're a
what will you
country.
do?
We're a country of laws.
And that's Berlin.
We either have a country or we don't have a
Well,
country.
see, this is where we
We're a
can finally
country
start
of
talking. Like,
laws. Gonna have to go out. And
like I think he has a good point.
They're
Like,
gonna have to
you
go
know,
out,
we
and hopefully
if
they
we
get
just if
back.
we disregard
We
some
have no
laws like
choice if
illegal
we're going to
immigration, that
run
kind of
our
lets
country
other laws up to,
properly, and if we're
you know,
going to be a country.
you know what makes you know keeping
Can we comment on that?
Wall Street,
Senator
Can
you
we
know,
comment on
bankers
that?
in line different from
Yeah, one quick comment.
keeping illegal immigrants
Well, look,
out. Like, you know,
in
it's
1986,
a law.
Ronald
Like,
Reagan basically said the people who were here, if they were
there's a reason
law-abiding,
why we
could
let people
stay.
in and out. You know,
What didn't happen is we didn't build the walls effectively, and we didn't control the border. We need to. We need to control our border just like people
I
have
think
to
we should do North
control
Korea does.
who
We have
goes
like
in and
2
out of their
fences
house.
and landmines
But
in
if
between. I don't
people
think we need a
think
big
that we are
stone
So
going
wall.
how
to
many
ship
miles of landmines?
11 million
I don't know,
people
but I
who
think
are
landmines can
law-abiding
always be
who are
cheaper
in
than
this country and somehow pick them up at their house and ship them
stone
out of Mexico
masonry.
to Mexico. Think about the families. Think about the children. So
Oh,
the answer really
that's
is,
what everybody
if they've been
says.
law-abiding,
Think
they pay a
about the
penalty, they
children.
get to
That's such
stay,
a
No,
we
I won't.
protect the wall,
that's such
anybody
a
else comes
like.
over, they go back. But for the 11 million people, come on, folks. We all know you can't pick them up and ship them back across the border. It's a silly argument. It's not an adult argument. It makes no
All I can
sense.
He's
say
saying you just can't. Like,
You just
is
can't.
that's what he's
you're
saying.
lucky
I don't know, they
Ohio
did
that you
halfway.
struck oil. That's let me just tell
But they
you
were aliens.
that Dwight Eisenhower, good president, great president, people liked him. I like Ike, right? The expression. I like Ike. Moved 1.5 million illegal immigrants out of this country. Moved them just beyond the border, they came back. Moved them again beyond the border, they came back. Didn't like it. Moved them way south, they never came back. Dwight Eisenhower. You don't get nicer, you don't get friendlier. They moved 1.5 million people out. We have no choice. We have no
Well, he
choice.
just mentioned my name.
That was a funny argument.
Yeah.
That wasn't a good argument. It was just
You're
funny.
not going to have my back. I'm going to have my back. Let me say a couple things here. First of all, we have grown.
You should let Jeff speak.
We have grown.
No, it's unfair.
In the state of Ohio.
This is talking over.
In the state of Ohio.
This is where it gets
In
kind
the
of
state of
stupid.
Ohio, we have grown 347,000 jobs. Our unemployment is half of what it was. Our fracking industry, energy industry, may have contributed 20,000. But if Mr. Trump understood that the real jobs come in the downstream, not in the upstream, but in the downstream, and that's where we're going to get our jobs. But Ohio is diversified. And little false little things, sir, they really don't work when it comes to the truth. So the fact is, all I'm
If
suggesting,
anyone was watching
we
this and
can't
they're
ship
wondering where the
11
Canadians
million
coming
people
from,
out of this country.
Halloween was like 2 weeks
Children
ago.
would be terrified and it will not work.
Mr. Trump, you've had a good. Let me just.
Built an unbelievable company worth billions and billions of dollars. I don't have to hear from this man. Believe me. I don't have to hear from him.
Mr. Trump, you yourself said let Governor Bush speak. Governor Bush.
Thank you, Donald, for allowing me to speak at the debate. That's really nice of you. Really appreciate that. What a generous man you are. 12 million
They
illegal
didn't even go ahead and
immigrants.
smoke it all yet.
To
The Indian guy was in the
send
first
them
debate.
back.
Oh, you're right,
500,000 a month. It's just not possible. And it's not embracing American values. And it would tear communities apart. And it would send a signal that we're not the kind of country that I know America is. And even having this conversation sends a powerful signal. They're doing high fives in the Clinton campaign right now when they hear this. That's the problem with this. We have to win the presidency. And the way you win the presidency is to have practical plans. Lay them out there. What we need to do is allow people to earn legal status where they pay a fine, where they work, where they don't commit crimes, where they learn English, and over an extended period of time, they earn legal status. That's the path, a proper path to make it.
Senator Rubio. Senator.
We have millions of people right now online trying to come into this country. Very, very unfair to the people that want to come into our country legally. They've gone through the process. They're online. They're waiting. Very, very unfair to them. That I can tell you.
Senator Rubio. Senator Rubio. Let me take you to a question that I think gets at the root of a lot of the anxiety that people have in this country. The economy is undergoing a transformation through information technology. Americans are anxious that the new economy isn't producing higher paying jobs. Many are concerned that the new wealth seems to be going mainly to innovators and investors. Meanwhile, with factories run by robots and shopping done increasingly on smartphones, many traditional jobs are just going away. How do you reassure American workers that their jobs are not being steadily replaced?
That's an excellent question. Because what we are going through in this country is not simply an economic downturn. We are living through a massive economic transformation. I mean, this economy is nothing like what it was like 5 years ago, not to mention 15 or 20 years ago. And it isn't just a different economy, it's changing faster than ever. It took the telephone 75 years to reach 100 million users. It took Candy Crush 1 year to reach 100 million users. So the world is changing faster than ever, and it is disruptive. Number one, we are in a global competition now, and several of the candidates have said that. There are now dozens of developed economies on this planet that we have to compete with.
Candy Crush just gave like $600 million
tax rate in the
Rubio via
because we have regulations that continue to grow by the billions every single week. Because we have a crazy healthcare law that discourages companies from hiring people. But because we're not fully utilizing our energy resources, that if we did, it would bring back all kinds of growth, especially in manufacturing, and because we have an outdated higher education system. Our higher education system is completely outdated. It is too expensive, too hard to access, and it doesn't teach 21st century skills. If we do what needs to be done, tax reform, regulatory reform, fully utilize our energy resources, repeal and replace Obamacare, and modernize higher education, then we can grasp the potential and the promise of this new economy. And we won't just save the American dream, we will expand it to reach more people and change more lives than ever before. And then truly, this new century can be a new American century.
This argument, if you fix everything will be fixed.
It was like
Senator Cruz, entitlements.
the biggest thing I heard was
for
changing
raising the
higher
retirement age and reducing benefits for future retirees. But reducing any sort of benefits for the elderly has always been notoriously hard to do politically. When Speaker Paul Ryan proposed replacing traditional Medicare with federally funded private plans a few years ago, a Liberal group responded with a commercial that featured a granny being pushed off a cliff. What's going to be different this time?
Well, my mom is here, so I don't think we should be pushing any grannies off cliffs.
Just calls mom a granny.
And you misstated what I said on entitlement reform.
My mom is
what
here,
I said
she's
is for
27 years
seniors, we
old.
should make no changes whatsoever. For younger workers, we should gradually raise the retirement age. We should have benefits grow more slowly, and we should allow them to keep a portion of their taxes in a personal account that they control and can pass on to their kids.
I said for future retirees, as you said.
Now, I want to go back to the discussion we had a minute ago because, what was said was right. The Democrats are laughing. Because if Republicans join Democrats as the party of amnesty, we will lose. And, I understand that when the mainstream media covers immigration, it doesn't often see it as an economic issue. But I can tell you for millions of Americans at home watching this, it is a very personal economic issue. And I will say the politics of it would be very, very different if a bunch of lawyers or bankers were crossing the Rio Grande. Or if a bunch of people with journalism degrees were coming over and driving down the wages in the press.
This is a solid point. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about this issue.
Then we would see stories about the economic calamity that is befalling our nation. And I will say, for those of us who believe people ought to come to this country legally and we should enforce the law, we're tired of being told it's anti-immigrant. It's offensive. I am the son of an immigrant who came legally from Cuba to seek the American dream. And we can embrace legal immigrations while believing in the rule of law. And I would note, try going illegally to another country. Try going to China or Japan. Try going to Mexico. See what they do. Every sovereign nation secures its borders, and it is not compassionate to say we're not going to enforce the laws and we're going to drive down the wages for millions of hardworking men and women. That is abandoning the working man.
That's not why.
Ted Cruz started going there.
We go back to Facebook. Dwayne Wesley Cato asks on Facebook, how do we get rid of regulations choking out businesses? Ms. Fiorina, specifically under the President's Affordable Care Act, employers with 50 or more employees are required to offer health insurance or be fined. Many are opting to pay the fine. Others are cutting back employee hours to duck the law altogether. What specific ways will you alleviate the pressure on small business?
Well, first, Obamacare has to be repealed because it's failing.
Both thing we all agree on.
It's failing the very people it was intended to
Well,
help.
clearly after
Also,
what
it
she
is
just,
crony
the question
capitalism
person
at
just
its
said, that is
worst.
a huge
Who helped
issue in
write this bill?
Obamacare.
Drug companies, insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, and every single one of those kinds of companies are bulking up to deal with big government. See, that's what happens. As government gets bigger and bigger, and it has been for 50 years under Republicans and Democrats alike, then businesses have to bulk up to deal with big government. So we have to repeal it. It's tens of thousands of pages long. No one can possibly understand it, except the big companies, the lawyers, the accountants, the lobbyists that they hire to protect their interests. Then we have to give back to states the responsibility to manage a high-risk pool. We need to try the one thing in health insurance we've never tried. Health insurance has always been a cozy little game between regulators and health insurance companies. We need to try the free market. The free market, where people actually have to compete.
An
And
office
we ought to have
brawl.
the government ensure
Like apparently
that
like there's like a big like
and I
taking
don't
and
use that
screaming
term
match and she's
often, the
fine.
government ought to do
So
something.
her big claim to
That every
fame is
healthcare
that
provider ought to publish
even though that
its
she's running on the
costs, its
Republican
prices, its outcomes,
ballot,
because as patients,
it's really
we
just because of
don't
policy.
know what we're buying.
And
Now,
that
let me just say,
she doesn't like the way how politics
I know
works.
more
She doesn't
about
like the fact that
innovation and entrepreneurship than anyone on this
politicians are
panel
being
because I have led
schmoozed by
innovative
big businesses and
businesses
stuff.
in the
She
most
knows based on being an
highly
insider.
competitive industry
Her
in
big
the
thing that
world
I
for
kind of thought was
decades.
interesting was
The truth
making a
is,
tax code that's
the
2
secret
pages long
sauce
that
of
any business owner
America
could read,
is
and
innovation
that
and
you know
entrepreneurship.
because
It is why
big
we
businesses
must
will
cut
hire
our government
you know
down to
1,000
size and hold
lawyers
it
to sort
accountable.
through
It's why we have
100,000
to take
pages
our
of tax
government
code
back,
to
because
find every single
innovation
loophole and make it cheaper on
entrepreneurship
them, and then it
is
makes the small businesses
crushed
suffer.
by the crushing load of a
And
73,000
so
page tax
she's
code.
kind of like
It is crushed by a regulatory
her
thicket.
policy is
It
very
is
right,
so vast,
but
we don't even know what's
her
in it anymore.
mindset
It
is
is
very
crushed
moderate.
as well by government
You know what I'm saying? She's
bureaucrats
willing to
who
work
don't
with
do
the
their jobs
Democrats. The
very
Democrats'
well and
policies
who are
like
not
hers.
held accountable, which is why I've said we've got to take our government back, and to do that, we have to know where every dollar is being spent and be able to move any dollar. We have to hack through this regulatory thicket, repeal so much, but also know what's in that regulatory thicket. We don't even know what regulations have been passed. Third, we need to build a meritocracy.
It can be kind of frustrating.
Scott Walker, by the way, is trying now to
Candidates
do
always go
in
over time.
Wisconsin. And finally, we need to get to a 3-page tax code, and yes, that plan exists.
Just to be clear, you want to repeal Obamacare, but what's the alternative? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Just to be clear, you said you would repeal Obamacare, but what is the alternative? And how does that help small business?
The alternative is to allow states to manage high-risk pools for those who really need help. Look, I'm a cancer survivor. Okay, I understand that you cannot have someone who's battled cancer just become known as a pre-existing condition. I understand that you cannot allow families to go bankrupt if they truly need help. But I also understand that Obamacare isn't helping anyone. We're throwing more and more people into Medicaid, and fewer doctors are taking those payments. The point is, Obamacare is crushing small businesses. It is not helping the families it was intended to help. So let us allow states to manage high-risk pools. Let us try the one thing in health insurance we've never tried, the free market. Let us ensure that as patients and customers, we have the information to shop wisely for our health care.
All right, thank you all very much. We're going to take a break here. Coming up, a big issue many Americans are facing. Taxes. The Republican presidential debate continues now, live from Milwaukee.
So that was like a good point. A lot of times people talk about their biographies. It kind of gets a little
Welcome
muddled.
back to the
And that was a
Republican
great point.
presidential
Like,
debate
I was a
live
cancer
from
survivor, but
Milwaukee.
I
Let's
truly
get back
believe
to the
that the
questions,
free
and we
market
want
could
to
make
touch on obviously
my,
one of the biggest
it
this
could
issue
make
in this year,
healthcare
taxes,
easier than
and this will go to
Affordable
several
Care
of
Act.
you. One of the
I think
biggest
that's,
economic concerns
she clearly has a lot of
in the
faith in
country
it.
are
That's what she's
taxes.
saying.
Facebook data certainly
The
backs
free
that
market
up.
isn't Canada's
Once again,
system.
the green on
It's
this
the
map that
opposite.
we're going to see here
Free
shows
market
that the
is
This is what
conversation
we have now.
no
around
regulations.
taxes is resonating across the nation.
We're steadily
especially
going
here
away
in
from free
Wisconsin.
market. We're
First off,
steadily
Dr.
going more and
Carson,
more
to you,
big
you
government,
say
less
you
free
are in
market.
favor of
Under
a tax system, I
Obama
guess, akin to
and stuff.
tithing, sir, with a flat
Yeah,
tax rate
Canada's
of
probably the
up to
opposite.
15%.
I mean,
Because you
actually,
said, if everybody
a
pays
lot of these
this,
other
I
countries
think
have
God is a pretty
a
fair
spending
guy, so tithing
tax.
is a pretty fair
So like if
process.
you buy a
But Donald
product, it's
Trump
usually a
says
lot
that is
more
not
expensive.
fair.
Yeah, like in Canada
That
they have
wealthier
higher
taxpayers
taxes,
should
but
pay a
free
higher
healthcare.
rate because
Well,
it's
they
a
have higher
fair thing to
taxes
do. So
on
whose
goods.
plan would God
That's what it
endorse
is.
then, Doctor?
Like you're not gonna have a high
Yours
income tax.
or
You're gonna have a
Mr.
high
Trump's?
tax on a good.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, when I say tithing, I'm talking about the concept of proportionality.
Right.
Everybody should pay the same proportion of what they make. You make $10 billion, you pay $1 billion. You make $10, you pay $1. You get the same rights and privileges. I don't see how anything gets a whole lot fairer than that. But you also have to get rid of all the deductions and all the loopholes, because that's the thing that tilts it in one direction or another. And you have to set the rate at an appropriate level. Now, I will say that there are a lot of people who say if you get rid of the deductions, you ruin the American dream because, you know, home mortgage deduction. But the fact of the matter is, people had homes before 1913 when we introduced the federal income tax, and later after that started deductions. And they say there'll be no more charitable giving. We had churches before that and charitable organizations before that. The fact of the matter is, I believe if you put more money in people's pockets, that they will actually be more generous rather than less generous. And it's the money that they earn. And
I like his plan. It just sounds too good to be true.
the other thing is, I do care about the poor people, and in the system that we're putting together, there will be a rebate for people at the poverty level. But I also want to emphasize the fact that as we get the economy moving, and I hope I get a question about how do we get the economy moving, there will be a lot more opportunities for poor people not to be poor people. Because this is America, this is the land of dreams, and our policies should be aimed at allowing people to realize that dream.
Thank you very much.
Well, I noticed some people are better at stopping it. Like Carly Fiorina just keeps going. She'll have like a 5-paragraph explanation, and she's on the 3rd paragraph when I hit the buzzer.
Yeah.
Ben Carson usually just
He's like, all right, I'll stop. Trump, I noticed he's like if he's in the middle of something, he'll finish the thought quicker than he would without the buzzer.
Budget crisis.
The thing I noticed with Trump is that
he respects it, but like
he respects the buzzer, but he doesn't respect the
in the
turns.
tax debate.
Yeah.
What's important about the tax debate is
If
that
it
we
was
have to
his way, it'd
ask
be a
the
shouting
question,
match.
where is money best spent? In the private sector and the government sector. I want a government really, really small. So small you can barely see it. So I want lower taxes and much more money in the private sector. My tax plan, however, is the only tax plan among any of the candidates on the stage that is part of a balanced budget plan. I put forward 3 plans that actually balance the budget over a 5-year period. Each of these plans have details on exactly where we'd cut. The question came up earlier, where would you cut? Nobody likes to say where they would cut. I've put pencil to paper and done 3 budgets that actually balance. I'm also in favor of a plan called the penny plan, where we just cut 1% across the board, and that budget actually balances in less than 5 years. So I think what's extraordinary about my tax plan is it is in the context of balancing the budget. What's also extraordinary about my tax plan is it gets rid of the payroll tax. Democrats demagogue this issue to death, and when they do, they say, oh, a millionaire would get a bigger tax cut than someone making $10,000. That's proportionality, as Ben's trying to explain to folks. But the thing is if we get rid of the payroll tax, everybody's going to get a tax cut. And this is something that I think the public at large will support and could win an election.
There are no deductions under your plan?
Ours is 14.5% for corporations, 14.5% for individuals, no payroll tax for the employee, the business tax pays for Social Security, and there would be 2 remaining deductions, home mortgage and charity.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Sounds pretty solid to me.
Yeah.
Senator Cruz.
I like the ones that just sound
There isn't
flat.
anyone in this
Like, I don't
audience
like the
or
ones that are all
watching at home
complicated.
tonight who would not like to pay
Trump has a
less
really
in taxes.
complicated tax plan. I
Most
think your
people
dad said
just want a
that.
fair
Like,
shake.
his
and they
tax
don't
plan
want their
is
money
like
to be wasted.
rich pay 14%, middle class pay 25%, poor pay 0 or something like that. Like, it's very complicated and very like.
Well,
it
sure,
isn't
you
very
put
middle
your
class
finger on
growth.
what the problem is. The current system isn't fair. Washington is fundamentally corrupt. There are more words in the IRS code than there are in the Bible. And not a one of them is as good.
Wow.
Every one of them reflects a
I'm not religious, but that was a good quote.
Not one of them is as what good?
Not one of them is as good.
Says that for a family of 4, for the first $36,000 you earn, you pay no taxes whatsoever. No income taxes, no payroll taxes, no nothing. Above that, every American pays 10% across the board, a flat, fair tax, which means that no longer do you have hedge fund billionaires paying a lower tax
he's not my
rate than their
favorite candidate,
secretaries.
but like he definitely has like those
On the
quotable
business
moments.
side, I've got a business flat tax of 16%. Again, that applies across
have, like,
the
a
board.
staff
Right
writer
now, with
or
the corporate
something.
income tax, giant corporations with
He wasn't
armies
even ready
of
with that.
accountants
Like,
regularly are paying little to no
away
taxes
his
while
system of the
small
Bible
businesses
thing.
are getting hammered. This is fair and across the board. Now, you ask, how do the numbers add up? I would encourage folks, if you go to our website, tedcruz.org, we have the specific numbers on the website.
Who referenced the website before?
Eliminates the payroll tax, eliminates the death tax,
I can see where they
corporate
reference the
income tax,
website, but
and it abolishes
the
the
tax
IRS.
code is so complicated that. But here's the thing: he said he had a flat tax. It shouldn't be complicated. If he's saying to go on the website, that means that it's complicated and that it's not a flat tax.
Every income group will see double-digit increases
Flat
from the
taxes.
very poorest
Everyone pays
to the very
20%. Everyone
weakest
pays
of at least
14.4%. Everyone pays 10%.
So if you're a single mom, if you're making $40,000 a year, what that means is an extra about $5,000 in your pocket to provide for your kids, to make ends meet. It has a powerful, powerful effect. And there's one other really powerful feature of my plan, which is that it's border adjustable, which means if you're an exporter, if you're a farmer, if you're a rancher, if you're a manufacturer, you don't pay the business flat tax. Exports are free of that tax, but all imports pay that 16% business flat tax, which means this tax plan would cause jobs to boom, and it would let America compete with China and the world on a level playing field.
But you
if you're not taxing the goods you're given, you know.
But you are taxing
the numbers the Tax Foundation have put out is that the static cost of the plan is $3.6 trillion over 10 years. But the dynamic cost of the plan, which is the cost that factors in growth, is about $768 billion. It is less than $1 trillion. It costs less than virtually every other plan people have put up here, and yet it produces more growth, and it's one of the very few plans that abolishes the IRS. But on top of that, today, we rolled out a spending plan, $500 billion in specific cuts, 5 major agencies that I would eliminate: the IRS, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Energy, the Department of Commerce, and HUD.
You just said Department of Commerce.
Yeah, he said Department of Commerce twice.
Again,
and also you need the IRS.
Yeah, like, I can't imagine how, like,
it's easy for
Department of
everyone
Commerce,
to say,
Department of
cut
Energy.
spending. It's much harder and riskier to
well,
put
I don't know about that one, but like
that's him saying that he'd get rid of
the programs you would
the
cut
EPA.
to
I
stop
think.
bankrupting our
If
kids.
you get rid of the EPA, if you get rid of
Governor Bush,
regulation of
Republican
energy,
primary voters say
then
tax reform
businesses
should
aren't
be
being
a priority
taxed.
for Congress
Or
and
they're
the
not being,
administration.
you're not
But
paying
Governor
for the.
Bush, how
It's stupid. I don't
important
like
is
that
tax
idea. It's
reform
dumb.
in your
You don't want to
domestic
get rid of
policy
federal
agenda? Will you guarantee
things
it In the first year,
maybe you get rid of
I'm going to fight as hard as I can
Planned
to make sure
Parenthood,
that we
which
shift
is like
power
the
away
super
from
left-wing
Washington, simplify
organization.
the tax
And you get
code
rid of
to spur economic activity in this country.
the
Of
NRA
course,
is a
it's the
union,
highest
I think,
priority.
or whatever.
If
But
we don't do that,
you
we're
get
stuck
rid of
with the new normal of 2% growth.
those are the only
says
government
basically, we just
organizations
gotta
I
get
can
used to
think
it.
of that
2%
are worth
growth means
cutting
declining
necessarily
income for
because
the
they're
middle
not really
class. It means more than
fundamental.
6 million
You know what I mean?
people are stuck in poverty than the day that Barack Obama was inaugurated. It means more demands on government. Growing the economy is the first job if we're going to be serious about dealing with the deficit and debt. And more importantly, people are really struggling right now. In this economy, the disposable income of the great middle is down $2,300. So yeah, we've created jobs, Gerard, you brought that up early it was a good question. Jobs are being created, but they're lower income jobs than the jobs that were lost. And the net effect of this is we need to jumpstart the economy. I think of Jonathan and Reagan Love, who are supporters of mine. Jonathan has been deployed by the National Guard. He's in Oklahoma. Reagan Love, by the way, pretty great name, I think, is a teacher. If they had this tax cut, what they told me was that $2,300 of money in their pocket, they would go back to South Carolina and start a business. Imagine what it would be like, instead of having more businesses closed than started, we have the exact opposite. We would grow our economy, and the government would get the revenue necessary to make things better. Hillary Clinton's approach to this is more top-down, more regulation, more taxes, more government, and it will destroy our economy.
Thank you, guys.
Senator Rubio. Senator Rubio. We're coming to you, Mr. Trump, in 1 second.
By this point, they should have rotated everyone.
Your tax plan includes a large expansion
Donald
of child
Trump
tax credits
isn't getting
to
that
raise
much
after-tax
time.
incomes for low-income parents.
I noticed that too.
A similar tax credit that you previously proposed in the Senate was estimated
Maybe they
to
just
cost
figured
as
he's
much
getting
as
a lot of time.
$170 billion a year, according to the Tax Foundation.
That's why you can't squeeze the top.
Isn't there a risk that you're just adding another expensive entitled program to an already overburdened federal budget?
The most important job I'm ever going to have, the most important job anyone in this room will ever have, is the job of being a parent. Not the job of being president, the job of being a senator, the job of being a congressman.
No way.
The most important job any of us will ever do is the job of being a president. Because the most important institution in society
There's no way that
you said this was the difference.
If the family breaks down, society breaks down. You can't have a strong nation
No.
without strong values.
The most important job is being the president. Get out
They
of
have to be
here.
taught to you in strong families and reinforced in you in strong communities. And so when we set out to do tax reform,
Nobody really cares that Molly Obama
and we endeavor to do it because we know how difficult
went to a
it is for
drinking party.
families
People care about that when Obama's doing policy. Yeah, exactly. Like no one cares that Obama is being a cool parent or too relaxed or whatever. Like I don't know if she got in trouble.
Why would the daughter of the president go to it? That just sounds dumb to me. Like I mean,
well, like she's trying to have a normal life. The picture of her, she's not even drinking. She's like holding her hair.
They don't know how they're going to make that
payment because there's a cute boy.
And if they can't make
it,
they can't work.
But that was like a big scandal thing.
They don't know how they're going to save for their kids' future.
I didn't even know about that.
And so yes, I have a
I
child
saw it on
tax credit
Instagram,
increase, and I'm proud of it. I am proud that I have a pro-family.
No, nobody cares that Molly Obama went to a drinking. People care more that Obama is doing X, Y, Z, like policy-wise. Like no one cares.
Remember Thanksgiving last year when they were like on their his daughters were on their phones?
We have to decide.
Or something like that,
and then there were like protesters or whatever. Like
people are so mad about that. Like
they were like, I shouldn't be paying attention at this thing where they had all these great people next to them.
No, if I was 14 years old, I would not care about politics. It's not a normal
it's a
teenager
welfare
would do.
transfer payment.
Like thumbs up to Obama for being a normal dad. It's just not caring.
Transfer
Like any other
new
parent.
welfare program that's a refundable tax credit. Add that to Marco's plan for $1 trillion in new military spending, and you get something that looks to me not very conservative. Thank you.
Governor Case. Governor Case.
Excuse me, I get to respond.
Very quickly, Senator.
No, I get my 60 seconds to respond. He's talking about my tax plan.
Please.
So let me begin with this. I actually believe, first of all, this is their money. They do pay. It is refundable, not just against the taxes they pay to the government, but also on their federal income tax. It's refundable against the payroll tax. Everyone pays payroll tax. This is their money. This is not our money. And here's what I don't understand. If you invest that money in a piece of equipment, if you invest that money in a business, you get to write it off your taxes. But if you invest it in your children, in the future of America, in strengthening your family, we're not going to recognize that in our tax code. The family is the most important institution in society. And yes, I do want to rebuild the American military. I know that Rand is a committed isolationist. I'm not. I believe the world is a stronger and a better place when the United States is the strongest
So is he gonna
military
get him
power in the
talking
world.
about how he's not nice to
How is it conservative? How is it conservative to add $1 trillion expenditure for the federal government that you're not paying for? How is it
Are you talking about the military,
conservative?
Rand?
How is it conservative to add $1 trillion in military expenditures? You cannot be a conservative if you're going to keep promoting new programs that you're not going to pay for.
I may respond more quickly.
So that's kind of he's saying
We can't even have an economy if we're not safe. There are radical
he
jihadists in the
he
Middle
wants
East beheading
to
people and
increase
crucifying
military
Christians.
spending.
A radical
Rand
Shia
Paul says
cleric
keep
in
the
Iran
same
trying to
or
get a
lower
nuclear
it.
weapon. The Chinese taking over the South China Sea. Yes, I believe the world is a safer. No, I don't believe. I know that the world is a safer and better place when America is the strongest military power in the world.
This is a bit split. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is clearly like a not.
I don't think we're any safer. I do not think we are any safer from bankruptcy court. As we go further and further into debt, we become less and less safe. This is the most important thing we're going to talk about tonight. Can you be a conservative and be liberal on military spending? Can you be for unlimited military spending and say, oh, I'm going to make the country safe? No, we need a safe country. But you know, we spend more on our military than the next 10 countries combined. I want a strong national defense, but I don't want us to be bankrupt.
Well, and there is a
See,
middle
that's where I'm
ground.
kind of
There
like
is a
for
middle
Rand Paul.
ground that brings both of these together.
I don't see why we spend
Middle ground
$10
that brings both
trillion
of these
dollars.
together.
Whatever, I don't even know what we spend, but it's crazy.
Yeah.
That we have to defend this nation. You think
Yeah, that sounds like a
defending
game
this
show,
nation is
Matt.
expensive? Try not defending it. That's a lot more
I said that in the
expensive,
beginning.
but
What?
you can
One
do
of the,
that and pay for it. You can do
So
that
this is
and
not a
also
game
be
show?
fiscally
He was like,
responsible.
I know
You
the
know, I
buzzer sounds like a
mentioned
game
the
show, but
25
it's not.
programs that I put out today that I would eliminate them. Among them are corporate welfare like sugar
They
subsidies.
should make this a
Let's
game show.
take
They should
that
have
as an
points.
example. Sugar subsidies.
And the polls are in.
Farmers,
Voters like Mark Rubio's answer.
0.2% of
Like,
farmland in America, and
see
yet
who
they give
actually won the debate.
40% of the
And
lobbying
that person
money.
gets
That sort of
elected
corporate
president
welfare is why we're
immediately.
bankrupting our kids and grandkids.
Come on
I put
down!
in those subsidies to pay for defending this nation.
And they get a
This
free
is
trip to
why,
Hawaii.
this is why we must combine, actually, zero-based budgeting with tax reform. Because unless we can examine
Well, she's
and
really trying to drive
cut
that point home.
and
Oh, she
move
was.
every single
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
dollar
Yeah.
of discretionary
I know,
spending
like
in
a
the
company I've
federal
heard of.
government, we cannot reform taxes and reduce spending at the same time. Ask yourself this question: how is it possible that the federal government gets more money each and every year, which the federal government has been doing, receiving more money every year for 50 years under Republicans and Democrats alike, and yet never has enough money to do the important things? The answer: all the money is always spoken for. All the money is spoken for. So we have to go to zero-based budgeting, which is a simple idea. By the way, there's been a bill for zero-based budgeting. It exists. It can be voted on. Every dollar must be examined. Any dollar can be cut. Any dollar can be moved. We have to go to a 3-page tax code. You lower every rate. You close every loophole. Why? Because the government uses the tax code to decide winners and losers. You have to strip the corruption out of the tax code to pay for it. You have to know where every single dollar is being spent.
We need
so
to
you can cut where you need to and invest where you need to. The two go hand in hand.
We do need to move on. Mr. Trump, the U.S. is just...
If I could,
very
we
quickly.
have to make our military bigger, better, stronger than ever before, so that nobody messes with us, and in the long run, it's going to save us. I agree with Marco. I agree with Ted. We have no choice. And I can say this with certainty. We all have a different tax plan. Some I don't totally agree with.
So I think if
One thing we
Rand Paul
understand,
won the primaries,
each
he's not going
one
to,
of
unfortunately.
those
But if he
tax
won the
plans is
primaries,
better than
he
the
won the
mess
presidency.
that we have.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
right
saying?
now.
Let's talk about...
I think we need to have
Mr.
those
Trump,
like half and half
I really must
policies,
move
like-
on. I want to
Yeah.
move on. Mr. Trump, Let's talk about the
Because
international
nobody
economy.
wants to have
The
more
US has
like
recently
welfare.
included.
In this. I know what people want more jobs. The people also don't want to go to war. Like, I'm not trying to fight ISIS. Are you trying to fight ISIS?
Crash the party,
No.
Mr. Baker. You know, what's
I
fair?
get drafted next year.
Mr. Trump, can I ask you about the US has just concluded an international trade agreement with 11 countries in the
When
Pacific.
you get drafted, it's
You
always
said
for
that
like
you'd rather have no deal.
Yeah, no. You always get the
Most economists
maybe
say
you
that
choose the
trade has boosted
branch,
growth,
maybe,
and every single
like,
post-war president has
but
supported the
because we're
expansion
fighting
of
in the
international
desert,
trade, including the last
check
3
the
Republican presidents.
see if the video still.
Why would you reverse more than 50 years of US trade policy?
The TPP
Oh, yeah,
is
still
a
recording.
horrible deal. It is a deal that is going to lead to
Oh,
nothing
the
but
TPP.
trouble. It's a deal that
Speaking of
was
that, they
designed
just
for
released all
China
the
to come in,
like
as
they
they
fully released the
always
papers
do,
on
through
that
the
a couple
back
days
door
ago.
and
Yeah, you
totally
said like
take
it would take
advantage
like
of
a bazillion
everyone.
lawyers to
It's
sort through all the.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what John
5,600
Oliver has to
pages
say about
long.
it on Sunday.
So complex that
Such a
nobody's
liberal.
read it. Like
Yeah.
Obamacare, nobody ever read it. They passed it, nobody read it. And look at the mess we have right now. And it will be repealed. But this is one of the worst trade deals, and I would, yes, rather not have it. With all of these countries and all of the bad ones getting advantage and taking advantage of what the good ones would normally get, I'd rather make individual deals with individual countries. We will do much better. We lose a fortune on trade. The United States loses with everybody. We're losing now over $500 billion in terms of imbalance with China. $75 billion a year imbalance with Japan. By the way, Mexico, $50 billion a year imbalance. So I must say, Gerard, I just think it's a terrible deal. I love trade. I'm a free trader 100%. But we need smart people making the deals, and we don't have smart people making the deals.
The deal, as you say, the terms of the deal were published just last week. The detail, 5,000 pages of it, and 80% of U.S. Trade with countries in the Pacific now, these 11 countries, is actually tariff-free. And the trade deal only affects the other 20%. Which are there particular parts of the deal that you think
Well, the currency manipulation they don't discuss in the agreement.
Did you read all 5,000 pages?
If you look at the way China and India and almost everybody takes advantage of the United States, China in particular, because they're so good. It's the #1 abuser of this country. And if you look at the way they take advantage, it's through currency manipulation. It's not even discussed in the almost 6,000-page agreement. It's not even discussed. And as you understand, I mean, you understand very well from the Wall Street Journal, currency manipulation is the single great weapon people have. They don't even discuss it in this agreement. So I say it's a very bad deal, should not be approved. If it is approved, it'll just be more bad trade deals, more loss of jobs for our country. We are losing jobs like nobody's ever lost jobs before. I want to bring jobs
Like
back
nobody's
into
ever
this
lost
country.
jobs.
Hey, Gerard, you know, we might want to point out China's not part of this deal.
True. It's true.
They're not?
But it's...
Mentioned.
I thought they were.
We get a little bit off
Isn't that part of the problem, if I may say, Senator, that if this deal is not ratified by the US, by the Senate, then it would actually give China an opportunity to grow its economic leadership, which it's been seeking to do. And if the US is unable to take part in this trade deal with these countries in Asia, China will take the lead.
There is an argument that China doesn't like the deal because in us doing the deal, we'll be trading with their competitors. You're exactly right. But I think we've sort of missed the point a little bit here. There is an important point, though, about how we discuss these trade treaties that I do agree with Mr. Trump on. We should negotiate from a position of strength, and we also should negotiate using the full force and the constitutional power that was given to us. I think it's a mistake that we give up power to the presidency on these trade deals. We give up the power to filibuster, and I'm kind of fond of that power. We give up the power to amend. And I think really one of the big problems we have in our country is over the last century, really, so much power has gravitated to the executive branch. Really, Congress is kind of a bystander. We don't write the rules, we don't make the laws, the executive branch does. So even in trade, and I am for trade, I think we should be careful about giving so much power to the presidency.
Thank you.
What was that uplifting music in the background?
They were going to go to
Coming
commercial.
up, the biggest threat facing the next commander-in-chief. You're watching the Republican presidential debate live tonight from Milwaukee.
Leave those seats in the audience are coming.
Welcome back. welcome back to the Republican presidential debate. The candidates taking the
Who are those
questions
people?
you
Are they
want
just
answered.
Wisconsin
Also
people?
I have
tonight,
no
you can
idea.
see what America is
Why
saying
would you
about the
go
debate. Go to
to there when you
Facebook
can
and
watch it on
type
TV?
You know, it kind of makes me wonder though. What they were saying about China and everything. What if we started trading with other people, and China went to war with us because we stopped trading with them?
We'd die.
Like, would they do that?
There's 1,000 of them, and like for every one of us.
Yeah.
I mean, unless we went to nuclear war, we probably would lose.
Yeah.
hashtag GOP debate into the search box. Now back to the questions.
Go, police.
Americans face security
Department.
threats at home and abroad.
eBay.
Last year, terrorist attacks rose 61%, according to the Institute for Economics and Peace, with the most deaths occurring in just 5 countries: Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nigeria, and Syria. Dr. Carson, you were against putting troops on the ground in Iraq and against a large military force in Afghanistan. Do you support the president's decision to now put 50 special ops forces in Syria and leave 10,000 U.S. troops in Afghanistan?
Well, putting the special ops people in there is better than not having them there because that's why they're called special ops. They're actually able to guide some of the other things that we're doing there. And what we have to recognize is that Putin is trying to really spread his influence throughout the Middle East. This is going to be his base, and we have to oppose him there in an effective way. We also must recognize that it's a very complex place. You know, the Chinese are there as well as the Russians, and you have all kinds of factions there. What we've been doing so far
It's kind of like
is
Fallout.
very ineffective,
Yeah.
but we can't give up ground right there. But we have to look at this on a much more global scale. We're talking about global jihadists, and their desire is to destroy us and to destroy our way of life. So we have to be saying, how do we make them look like losers? Because that's the way that they're able to gather a lot of influence. And I think in order to make them look like losers, we have to destroy their caliphate. And you look for the easiest place to do that, it would be in Iraq. And if outside of Anbar in Iraq, there's a big energy field. Take that from them, take all of that land from them. We could do that, I believe, fairly easily. I've learned from talking to several generals. And then you move on from there. But you have to continue to face them because our goal is not to contain them, but to destroy them before they destroy us.
What?
It's funny.
We asked Facebook to take a
our
look
goal
at
is
some
to-
of the major issues we're
Our goal is not to
talking about
contain
and
them,
tackling in this
just
debate
to destroy
tonight.
them before they can
This
destroy
word
us.
cloud shows what people are focusing on the most.
They made a
The
word
bigger the
cloud.
word, the more the talk. One of the most discussed issues in the last month, Homeland Security. Governor Bush,
How pretty.
what is the biggest threat facing America today?
I'd say it is Islamic terrorism. And back to the question of what we were dealing with in Iraq, when we pull back, voids are filled. That's the lesson of history. And sadly, this president does not believe in American leadership. He does not believe it. And the net result is that we have a caliphate the size of Indiana that gains energy each and every day to recruit Americans in our own country. And the threat to the homeland relates to the fact that we've not dealt with this threat of terror in the Middle East. We should have a no-fly zone in Syria. We should have support for the remnants of the Syrian Free Army and create safe zones. If you want to deal with the 4 million refugees that are leaving Syria because of the devastation there, then we ought to create safe zones for them to stay in the region rather than go to Europe. And that requires American leadership. Without American leadership, every other country in the neighborhood begins to change their priorities. It is tragic that you see Iraq and other countries now talking to Russia. It wasn't that long ago, Russia had no influence in the region at all. And so the United States needs to lead across the board.
Why is it
This
our
president
job to
and Hillary Clinton both
prevent
do not believe that
refugees
the
from going
United
to Europe?
States has a
Shouldn't it be the
leadership
European
role to
countries
play,
that
and
are
we're now paying
creating
the
these
price,
safe
and
zones
it will
type
have a
thing?
huge impact on the economy of this country if we don't deal with this.
Thank you, sir.
I think it's a pretty good idea.
Mr. Trump,
Safe zones as opposed to
in
just
a
going around and
2012
finding them.
debate, President
Bad
Obama
people. Have them
mocked
come to
Mitt
us.
Romney's
I don't
assertion
think-
that
I think we just
Russia
need to leave.
was the top geopolitical
100%.
challenge facing the United States.
I have
saying
never
he
been
was a
for
Cold War
fighting
dinosaur.
because I don't
Now,
want to get
Russia
drafted.
has invaded Ukraine and has put troops in Syria. You have said you will have a good
I wonder if I can
relationship
get
with Mr.
drafted, even though
Putin.
I'm blind.
So
Huh?
what does President
You think I could
Trump
get drafted with
do
my eye?
in response to
Maybe not.
Russia's aggression?
Well, first of all, it's not only Russia.
Like,
We
I-
have problems
they let
with
me
North
drive,
Korea
though.
where they actually have
They probably draft
nuclear
you,
weapons. You know,
honestly.
nobody talks about it. We talk about Iran,
Can
and
you
that's
read
one of the
a
worst deals
can you
ever
read a like
made,
an eye
one of the
test?
worst contracts ever signed, ever in
To
anything,
an extent,
and
yeah.
it's a disgrace.
Then you probably get
But
drafted.
Yeah, the issue is
we
the
have somebody
perception.
over there, a
I'm just
madman
saying,
who
like,
already has
they're
nuclear
just
weapons. We don't talk about that.
they
That's
just
the
kind of
problem.
push you along. They're
China
like, can you do
is the
6
problem, both
push-ups?
economically
Can
and
you
what
pass
they're
this eye
doing in
test? All
the
right.
South China
Get on your
Sea. I
plane
mean,
and
they
go
are
on a training
becoming a
base.
very, very major
I can't
force.
read
So we
that.
have more than just Russia.
I don't
But
know.
as far as the Ukraine is concerned, and you could say Syria, as far as Syria, I like if Putin wants to go in, and I got to know him very well because we were both on 60 Minutes. We were stablemates, and we did very well that night. But you know that. But if Putin
That's
wants
funny.
to go and knock the hell out of ISIS, I am all for it 100%, and I can't understand how anybody would be against it. They blew up, hold it, they blew up, wait a minute.
Hold it.
They blew up a Russian airplane. He cannot be in love with these people. He's going in, and we can go in, and everybody should go in. As far as the Ukraine is concerned, we have a group of people and a group of countries, including Germany, tremendous economic behemoth. Why are we always doing the work?
See, that's what I
I'm all
say.
for protecting Ukraine and working, but we have countries that are surrounding the Ukraine that aren't doing anything. They say, keep going,
Still going.
you dummies, keep going, protect us. And we have to get smart. We can't continue to be the policemen of the world. We owe $19 trillion. We have a country that's going to hell. We have an infrastructure that's falling apart, our roads, our bridges, our schools, our airports, and we have to start
Did you already say
investing
that?
money in our country.
He's at the least time with the best
Donald
points.
is wrong on this. He is absolutely wrong on this. We're not going to be the world's policeman, but we sure as heck better be the world's leader. There's a huge difference where
I don't see the
without us
difference.
leading,
Hey, what he
voids
said?
are filled.
He said he's
The
wrong.
idea that
We
it
don't have
is
to be
a
the world's
good idea
policeman.
for
We have to
Putin
be
to
the
be in
world's leader.
Syria, let
I don't
ISIS
see
take
the
out
difference.
Assad, and then Putin will take out ISIS. I mean, that's like a board game. That's like playing
Is he
Monopoly or something. That's not how the real world works.
Wrong game is risky.
Never played
We have a
Monopoly.
no-fly zone in Syria. They are barrel bombing the innocents in that country. If you're a Christian, increasingly in Lebanon or Iraq or Syria, you're going to be beheaded. And if you're a moderate Islamist, you're not going to be able to survive.
All right, you
have
lost.
to
You said
play a role in
Islamist.
this
It's
to be
Muslim.
able to bring the
It's
rest of the
Muslim.
world to this
Get out of
issue
here.
before it's too late.
Islam's a bad guy.
Moderate
But we have
Islamist.
no
It's Muslim.
idea who the
Oh
so-called
my
rebels.
God.
I read about the
Moderate
rebels. Nobody even knows who they
Islamists.
are. I
What does that
spoke to a
mean?
general 2
It's
weeks
not a-
ago.
I mean,
He
like,
said he
yeah,
was
kind
very
of.
up on
you know what he
exactly
was
we're
trying to
talking
say,
about.
but it's
He
Muslim.
said, you know,
Just
Mr.
Muslim.
Trump, we're
Jesus.
giving hundreds of millions of dollars of equipment to these people. We have no idea who they are. So I
I said that.
he's going to like
We have
us
no
all,
idea who
but
they
we have no
are.
idea who these people and what they're going to be and what they're going to represent. They may be far worse than Assad. Look at Libya. Look at Iraq. Look at the mess we have after spending $2 trillion, thousands of lives, wounded warriors all over the place who I love. Okay, all over. Nothing. And I said,
Don't ask
keep
no
the
Donald
oil.
Trump.
We should have kept the oil, believe me. We should have kept the oil. And you know what? We should have given the oil. We should have given big chunks to the people that lost their arms, their legs, and their families and their sons and daughters. Because right now, you know who has a lot of that oil? Iran and ISIS.
You know, Mr. Trump fancies himself a very good negotiator. And I accept that he's done a lot of good deals. So Mr. Trump ought to know that we should not speak to people from a position of weakness. Senator Paul should know that as well. One of the reasons I've said that I would not be talking to Vladimir Putin right now, although I have met him as well, not in a green room for a show, but in a private meeting.
What?
What?
One of the reasons I've said I wouldn't be talking to Vladimir Putin right now is because we are speaking to him from a position of weakness brought on by this administration. So I wouldn't talk to him for a while, but I would do this. I would start rebuilding the Sixth Fleet right under his nose, rebuilding the missile defense program in Poland right under his nose. I would conduct very aggressive military exercises in the Baltic states so that he understood we would protect our NATO allies. And I might also put in a few more thousand troops into Germany to start a war. But to make sure that Putin understands that the United States of America will stand with our allies. That is why Governor Bush is correct. We must have a no-fly zone in Syria because Russia cannot tell the United States of America where and when to fly our planes. We also have a set of allies. We have a set of allies in the Arab Middle East who know that ISIS is their fight. They have asked us specifically over and over again to support them. King Abdullah of Jordan, a man I've known for a very long time, has asked us for bombs and materiel. We have not provided it. The Egyptians are asking us to share intelligence. We are not, I will. The Kurds have asked us to arm them for 3 years. We're not, I would. The Egyptians, the Saudis, the Kuwaitis, the Bahrainis, the Emirati, the Kurds, all of these people I know, by the way, understand ISIS is their fight, but they must see leadership support and resolve from the United States of America. And we must have the strongest military on the face of the planet, and everyone has to know it.
Senator Paul.
Senator
Paul.
Why?
You have already said, sir, that would be a mistake in not talking to Vladimir Putin or to rule it out. You argued that it's never a good idea to close down communication. With that in mind, do you think the same applies to administration efforts right now to include the Iranians in talks on Syria?
I'd like first to respond to the accusation. I think it's particularly naive and particularly foolish to think that we're not going to talk to Russia. The idea of a no-fly zone, realize that this is also something Hillary Clinton agrees with several on our side with. You're asking for a no-fly zone in an area in which Russia already flies. Russia flies in that zone at the invitation of Iraq. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but you better know at least what we're getting into. So when you think it's going to be a good idea to have a no-fly zone over Iraq, realize that means you are saying we are going to shoot down Russian planes. If you're ready for that, be ready to send your sons and daughters to another war in Iraq. I don't want to see that happen. I think the first war in Iraq was a mistake.
Yeah, it's a war against Russia in Iraq.
You can be strong without being involved in every civil war around the world.
How would you respond?
Ronald Reagan was strong, but Ronald Reagan didn't.
And Ronald Reagan walked away at Reykjavik. He walked away. He quit talking when it was time to quit talking.
Why does she keep interrupting everybody?
I love
I'd like to finish my response, basically.
If I may respond,
this is an important question. This is an incredibly important question. The question goes to be, who do we want to be our commander-in-chief? Do you want a commander-in-chief who says something that we never did throughout the entire Cold War, to discontinue having conversations with the Russians? I'm not happy about them flying over there, but I'm not naive enough to say, well, Iraq has them flying over their airspace. We're just going to announce that we're shooting them down. That is naive to the point of being something you might hear in junior high, but it's scary.
But if you're not going to respond in a no-fly zone strategy, what would yours be?
The first thing I would do is I wouldn't arm our enemies. I wouldn't arm ISIS. Most of the people who want the no-fly zone also favored arming the allies of Al-Qaeda, which became ISIS. That was the dumbest, most foolhardy notion, and most of the people up here supported it. They wanted to arm the allies of Al-Qaeda. Some of them still do. That's how ISIS grew. We pushed back Assad, and ISIS was allowed to grow in the vacuum. So the first thing you do is don't arm your enemies.
Well, the thing I might just say is
the problem is after we overthrew their government, we had no plan for their government, so they just had this faction.
I never met Vladimir Putin, but I know enough about him to know he's a gangster. He's basically an organized crime figure that runs a country, controls a $2 trillion economy, and is using it to build up his military in a rapid way, despite the fact his economy is a disaster. He understands only geopolitical strength. And every time he has acted anywhere in the world, whether it's in Ukraine or Georgia before that, or now in the Middle East, is because he is testing a weakness. His calculation in the Middle East is that he's seen what this president has done, which is nothing. The president has no strategy. Our allies in the region do not trust us. For goodness sake, there's only one pro-American free enterprise democracy in the Middle East. It's the state of Israel. And we have a president that treats the prime minister of Israel with less respect than what he gives the Ayatollah in Iran. And so our allies in the region don't trust us. Vladimir Putin is exploiting that weakness for purposes of edging the Americans out as the most important geopolitical power broker in the region. And we do have a vested interest, and here's why. Because all those radical terrorist groups that, by the way, are not just in Syria and in Iraq. ISIS is now in Libya. They are a significant presence in Libya and in Afghanistan and a growing presence in Pakistan. Soon they'll be in Turkey, they'll try Jordan, they'll try Saudi Arabia. They are coming for us. They recruit Americans using social media. And they don't hate us simply because we support Israel. They hate us because of our values. They hate us because our girls go to school. They hate us because women drive in the United States. Either they win or we win. We better take this risk seriously. It is not going away.
What? It's because I hate us because I win us.
Governor Kasich, I want to ask you about China. In particular, hundreds of American companies have been subjected to cyber attacks from the Chinese military. Yet state-backed Chinese companies are growing their presence in the United States. Chinese investments in the US, which were nearly non-existent a few years ago, are now over $50 billion. And as my newspaper recently reported, Chinese companies are planning to bid for one of the largest hotel chains in the United States, what would be the largest ever Chinese takeover of a US company. Would you stop them?
Let me tell you this, Mr. Baker. In terms of the cyber attacks, we have the capability to not only have a defensive posture, but also to make it clear to people that if you attack us with cyber attacks, we will destroy the mechanisms that you're using to attack us. I want to give you a little trip around the world. I served on the Defense Committee for 18 years. In the Ukraine, arm the people there so they can fight for themselves. In the eastern part of Europe, make sure that Finland and the Baltics know that if the Russians move, we move. In Syria, yes, a no-fly zone in the north on the Turkish border, a no-fly zone on the south on the Jordanian border. Anybody flies in the first time, maybe they can fly out. They fly in there a second time, they will not fly out. And it also becomes a sanctuary for the people to be, and it also sends many messages in the Middle East that we're still involved. Saudi Arabia, cut off the funding for the radical clerics, the ones that preach against us, but they're fundamentally our friends. Jordan, we want the king to reign for 1,000 years. Egypt, they've been our ally and a moderating force in the Middle East throughout their history. In the countries of the Gulf states of Bahrain, the Cleveland Clinic is opening an operation. Clearly, we see the same with them. And in Israel, we have no better ally in the world, and no more criticizing them in public. We should support them. And finally, China. China doesn't own the South China Sea. And I give the president some credit for being able to move a naval force in there to let the Chinese know that we're not going to put up with it anymore. And in the trade agreement, the TPP, it's critical to us, not only for economic reasons and for jobs, because there's so many people who are connected to getting jobs because of trade, but it allows us to create not only economic alliances, but also potentially strategic alliances against the Chinese. They're not our enemy, but they're certainly not our friend. And finally, I would say to everybody in this room, we've been talking about taxes and economics. When the fall comes and we run against Hillary,
that's why he's not going to win.
which would be a disaster if she got elected. I have two 16-year-old girls, and I want this country to be strong. We make promises we can't keep under the bright light of the fall, we will have trouble. We must make sure that our economic programs and our military programs are solid. I served in Washington as the chairman of the Budget Committee. We got the budget balanced, and in Ohio as the CEO, and guess what? We got to have a CEO mentality and a way to beat Hillary Clinton and the Democrats in the fall. And our ideas have to add up. They have to be solid. And people have to know we have the confidence to lead America. And as president, I will lead this country as I have before in Washington and in Ohio, and will return both on domestic and international affairs. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak this time, Jerry.
Thank you, Governor. Plenty of opportunities. Thank you.
All right, and look at the time. Look at the time. You are watching Fox Business. We'll take a break. Stick around.
We still have 3 more points.
Stick around.
We'll take a little break here. Something I want to read.
Because we're doing what?
Hang on.
We're gonna read the entire TPP.
No.
What is that?
Hang on. All right. Here's the actual transcript of a U.S. naval ship with Canadian authorities off the coast of Newfoundland in October 1995. This radio conversation was released by the Chief of Naval Operations on October 10th, 1995. Americans, so I'll be Americans, you be Canadians, all right?
Yeah.
Please divert your course 15 degrees to the north to avoid a collision.
Recommend you divert your course 15 degrees south to avoid a collision.
This is the captain of a U.S. Navy ship. I say again, divert your course.
No, I say again, you divert your course.
This is the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, the second largest ship in the United States' Atlantic Fleet. We are accompanied by 3 destroyers, 3 cruisers, and numerous support vessels. I demand that you change your course 15 degrees north. That's 15 degrees north, or countermeasures will be undertaken to ensure the safety of this ship.
This is a lighthouse, your call. That's funny.
Alright, back to the debate.
Welcome back to the Republican presidential debate, live from Milwaukee. Now, let's get straight back to the questions. Governor Bush. Governor, Hillary Clinton recently said that if we had another financial crisis like the one in 2008,
doesn't count because he's the
she wouldn't bail out the banks.
But Hillary Clinton doesn't count because he's the question.
We shouldn't have another financial crisis. What we ought to do is raise the capital requirements so banks aren't too big to fail. Dodd-Frank has actually done the opposite. Totally the opposite. Where banks now have higher concentration of risk and assets, and the capital requirements aren't high enough. If we were serious about it, we would raise the capital requirements and lessen the load on the community banks and other financial institutions. This vast overreach has created a huge problem for our country. Hillary Clinton wants to double down on that.
I think the last
I was
2 days
in
are
Washington, Iowa, about 3 months ago.
I hope so.
Talking about how
Yeah, this
bad
one's 15
Washington,
minutes.
D.C. is.
I think the next one is
kind of
8, and then the last one is 11.
Anyway, we had...
Gotcha.
I talked to a banker there. This is a bank that had $125 million of assets, 4 branches. Their compliance cost because of Dodd-Frank went from $100,000 to $600,000 in a 2-year period. The net effect of that is, and they had not one loan that went bad during the financial crisis. They knew their borrowers. They gave back to the community. They were engaged in the community. And imagine America without its community banks. Well, that's what's happening because of Dodd-Frank. That's my worry. My worry is that the real economy has been hurt by the vast overreach of the Obama administration. And Hillary Clinton, she wants to double down on that. She wants to create even more so. She is a captive of the left of her party to the point now where she was for the trade agreement and the Pacific Agreement. Now she's against it. She was hinted she was for the XL pipeline. Now she's opposed to it. All the things that would create sustained economic growth, she's now doubling down against it.
Governor, but can I just quickly say, you can't seriously guarantee that there won't be another financial crisis, can you?
If you could, if you were serious about it.
There'll never be another financial crisis?
No, I can't say that, but I can say if you created higher capital requirements, that's the solution to this. Not having concentration of assets, the bigger banks now have more and more control over the financial assets of this country, and that is the wrong approach to take.
Dr. Carson, if I may, just on that point, despite measures taken, as the governor says, since the crisis to make the financial system safer, the major banks in the US, many of them are actually bigger than ever. Assets held by JP Morgan Chase, for example, the very largest bank, have increased by nearly 40% to over $2.6 trillion. Do you think JP Morgan and the other big banks should be broken up?
Well, I think we should have policies that don't allow them to
He's grown hair
enlarge
throughout this debate.
themselves at
You
the
think?
expense of
His hair looks
smaller
thicker and darker.
entities. And certainly some of the
Maybe.
policies, some of the monetary and Fed policies that we're using makes it very easy for them. Makes it very easy for the big corporations, quite frankly, at these very low interest rates to buy back their stock and to drive the price of that up artificially. Those are the kinds of things that led to the problem in the first place. And I think this all really gets back to this whole regulation issue,
I wonder how
which
many
is
times we've gone out
creating
of focus.
a very abnormal
Right, Tom.
situation. This country was declared its independence in 1776. In less than 100 years, it was the #1 economic power in the world. And the reason was because we had an atmosphere that encouraged entrepreneurial risk-taking and capital investment. Those are the fuels that drive it. And what we've done now is let the creep of regulation turn into a stampede of regulations, which is involved in every aspect of our lives. If we can get that out, it makes a big difference. And even for the average person, every single regulation costs money, and it's shifted to the individual. So, and it hurts the poor and the middle class much more than it does the rich. They go into the store and they buy a bar of soap. It costs 10 cents more. They notice it. And the middle class, when they come to the cash register, they have a whole cart full of things that cost 5, 10, or 15 cents more. They notice it. It is hurting the poor. Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton won't tell you that that's the thing that's really hurting the middle class and the poor. They'll say it's the rich. Take their money. But that won't help. You can take all of the rich's money and it won't make a dent in the problem that we're having. We have to come back to the fundamental principles that made
Oh, no.
America great.
I mean, like,
Just to be
I
clear,
could definitely see what you're saying about the sense. Like,
Yeah,
just to be
that
clear,
makes sense, but I feel like what he said about
favor breaking
Clinton
up the
and
big
Sanders
banks.
didn't make
You think
sense.
that they're big enough? They're
Like,
okay,
I
they
feel like if you were to
I
take
would
all
have
the rich people's money
policies
away
that
and
wouldn't
put it somewhere
allow
else, there would
that
be
to occur.
you would notice
I
it.
don't want to go
See,
in
I
and
think
tear
that,
anybody down.
the whole way
I mean,
how
that
it works
doesn't
is
help
the,
us. But what does
when the
help
rich
us
have a
is stop
surplus of money, they
tinkering
put it back
around the
into banks,
edges
and then
and
banks have more
fix
money to
the
loan.
actual problems
Well,
that
maybe.
exist that are creating the problem in the
Can I
first
just
place.
add with this? He's
What's
right
your
on
question,
point. You
Matt?
know why these banks are so big? The
What is
government
this?
made them.
Alright, guys, it's homework time.
Sam,
How many of these do you have?
This is the other side.
I think you're just slow.
Wait, you know, come on. Alright. You have the word hate, and you have to add one letter to get a hurry.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of waste. I mean, no, it's like waste, but it starts with an H.
Oh yeah, I thought of it.
Yes, that's the word. Ding, ding, ding.
I didn't even think of that word. Instead of adding a letter, I was thinking, alright, what letters can we change?
Alright,
Why'd you put a sticky note on
let's
there?
keep going here.
The government made them big by adding thousands and thousands of pages of regulations. So the big banks, they have an army of lawyers, they have an army of compliance officers. They can deal with all these things. The small banks, like Governor Bush was saying, they can't deal with all these regulations. They can't deal with all, they cannot hire the fanciest law firm in Washington or the best lobbying firm to deal with all these regulations. And so the result is the big banks get bigger, the small banks struggle to lend or even exist. And the result is what you have today. And in Dodd-Frank, you have actually codified too big to fail. We have actually created a category of systemically important institutions, and these banks go around bragging about it. You know what they say to people with a wink and a nod? We are so big, we are so important that if we get in trouble, the government has to bail us out. This is an outrage. We need to repeal Dodd-Frank as soon as possible.
Let me also say, Jerry.
I never watched the full
Let me also
debate.
say,
Yeah.
the Jeb is
This
the
from
Jeb
like
is
August,
talking
right?
about with the
No,
big
this was
banks
last
is to
night.
force
This was last
them
night?
Yeah.
to reserve their capital of
Oh.
people who invested and they hold their capital so that
Are
if
you
the
like,
bank
darn, I
goes
should have been paying
down,
more
the
attention?
people who have
No,
invested in the bank
I think
are the
I'm
ones that
letting
pay.
it out.
That's what he's trying to say. Secondly,
I don't know.
I'll tell you about Wall Street. There's too much greed. And the fact
Actually, I knew
is,
that.
a free enterprise system is a system that's produced the greatest wealth for the world. But you know, Michael Novak, the great Catholic theologian, says that a free enterprise system that is not underlaid with values, and we should all think about the way we conduct our lives. Yes, free enterprise is great, profits are great, but there have to be some values that underlay it, and they need a good ethics lesson on Wall Street on a regular basis to keep them in check so we, the people, do not lose. Thank you.
Gerard, can I?
I do want to follow up question. Senator Cruz, and I will get to you, but Senator Cruz, on that theme, Facebook data shows that over the last month alone, nearly 1 million people, nearly 1 million, have been concerned about reining in Wall Street, apparently believing that some have not been punished enough. So as an accomplished litigator yourself and a former Solicitor General, would you go after the very people who believe and fear that Wall Street has ignored? In other words, the crooks that Bernie Sanders say have gotten away with a financial
Corey said
murder.
before.
Absolutely, yes. You know, I've spent much of my adult life enforcing the law and defending the Constitution. And the problem that underlies all of this is the cronyism and corruption of Washington. You know, the opening question Jerry asked, would you bail out the big banks again? Nobody gave you an answer to that. I'll give you an answer. Absolutely not. And what we have right now is we have Washington as government gets bigger and bigger. You know, the biggest lie in all of Washington and in all of politics is the Republicans are the party of the rich. The truth is the rich get great with big government. They get in bed with big government. The big banks get bigger and bigger and bigger under Dodd-Frank, and community banks are going out of business. And by the way, the consequence of that is small businesses can't get business loans. And it is that fundamental corruption that is why 6 of the 10 wealthiest counties in America are in and around Washington, D.C. Now, let me give you a contrast to Washington cronyism. Some weeks ago, a woman named Sabina Loving testified at a hearing that I chaired in the Senate. Sabina Loving is an African-American single mom who started a tax preparation business in the south side of Chicago. She found a storefront. She wanted to have her own business. She started a business. But then the IRS promulgated new regulations targeting tax preparers. They did it under a more than 100-year-old statute called the Dead Horse Act. Now, this statute and the IRS, in classic Washington crony fashion, had exemptions for lawyers and big fancy accountants, but Sabina had to pay $1,000 an employee. It would have driven her out of business, and Ms. Loving sued the IRS. She took the Obama IRS to court, and she won, and they struck down the rule for picking the big guys over the little guys.
Senator, I really want to be clear. Are you saying, sir, that if the Bank of America were on the brink, you would let it fail?
Yes. Now, let's be clear. There is a role for the Federal Reserve. What the Fed is doing now is it is a series of philosopher kings trying to guess what's happening with the economy. You look at the Fed, one of the reasons we had the financial crash is throughout the 2000s, we had loose money, we had an asset bubble, it drove up the price of real estate, drove up the price of commodities, and then in the third quarter of 2008, the Fed tightened the money.
We'll go find out.
And crashed those asset prices, which caused a cascading collapse. That's why I'm supporting getting back to rules-based monetary system, not with a bunch of philosopher kings deciding, but tied ideally to
Sir, I understand that. I just want to be clear, if you don't mind, that millions of depositors would be on the line with that decision.
Well,
and I just want to be clear, if it were to happen again, for whatever the reason, that you would let it go. You would let a Bank of America go.
So let me be clear. I would not bail them out. But instead of adjusting monetary policy according to whims and getting it wrong over and over again and causing booms and busts, what the Fed should be doing is, number one, keeping our money tied to a stable level of gold, and number two, serving as a lender of last resort. That's what central banks do. So if you have a run on a bank, the Fed can serve as a lender of last resort, but it's not a bailout. It is a loan at higher interest rates. That's how central banks have worked. And I'll point out, look, we had a gold standard under Bretton Woods. We had it for about 170 years of our nation's history and enjoyed booming economic growth and lower inflation than we have had with the Fed now. We need to get back to sound money, which helps in particular working men and women. What Washington does, the people who are doing well in the Obama economy, are those with power and influence in the Obama government, the people who are working men and women, and that's who we need to fight for.
Neil, that's the difference of being an executive. And let me just explain. When a bank is ready to go under and depositors are getting ready to lose their life savings, you just don't say we believe in philosophical concerns. You know what an executive has to decide? When there's a water crisis, how do we get water to the city? When there's a school shooting, how do you get there and help heal a community? When there are financial crises or a crisis with Ebola, you got to go there and try to fix it. Philosophy doesn't work when you run something. And I got to tell you, on-the-job training for President of the United States doesn't work. We've done it for 8 years, and almost 8 years now, it does not work. We need an executive who's been tried, has been tested, and judge the decisions that that executive makes. I don't like what the Fed is doing, but I'll tell you what worries me more than anything else. Turning the Fed over to the Congress of the United States so they can print the money. That would be a very bad approach for them.
Governor Kasich, why would you then bail out rich Wall Street banks, but not Main Street, not mom and pop, not Sabina Loving? Well, you just said an executive knows to step in and bail out a bank.
They were talking about what you would do with depositors. Would you let these banks shut down? My argument is going forward, the banks have to reserve the capital so that the people who own the capital start pressuring the banks to not take these risky approaches, Ted. But at the end of the day,
you said you'd abandon philosophy and abandon principle, but what would you do if the bank was failing?
Because if during, what would you do if the bank was failing? I would not let the people who put their money in there all go down.
So you would bail them out?
No, as an executive, I would figure out how to separate those people who can afford it versus those people or the hardworking folks who put their money in those institutions. Let me say another thing. Here's what I mean by that. When you are faced in the last financial crisis with banks going under, and people who put their life savings in there, you got to deal with it. You can't turn a blind eye to it. Now, going forward, that's one thing. If you had another financial crisis, perhaps there would be an effort to make sure that we do.
Could I just say, as a chief executive who's had to make tough calls to save jobs and to grow jobs, I think what's interesting about Dodd-Frank is it's a great example of how socialism starts. Socialism starts when government creates a problem and then government steps in to solve the problem. Government created the problem. Government created the problem of a real estate boom. How did we create it? Under Republicans and Democrats alike, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, everybody gathered together, Republicans and Democrats, and said home ownership is part of the American dream. Let's create a bubble. And then government stepped in, by the way, under President George W. Bush. Banks were encouraged, really, to buy other banks, to take money. And now what do we have with Dodd-Frank? The classic of crony capitalism. The big have gotten bigger. 1,590 community banks have gone out of business. And on top of all that, we've created something called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, a vast bureaucracy with no congressional oversight that's digging through hundreds of millions of your credit records to detect fraud. This is how socialism starts, ladies and gentlemen. We must take our government back.
That's a good point.
More questions coming up when the Republican presidential debate comes right back. Welcome back to the fourth Republican presidential debate. Senator Rubio, Hillary Clinton is the clear front runner for the Democratic nomination. If she is indeed the nominee, you will be facing a candidate with an impressive resume. She was the First Lady of the United States, a U.S. Senator from New York, and Secretary of State under Barack Obama. She has arguably more experience, certainly more time in government, than almost all of you on stage tonight.
They're all like,
Why should the American people trust you to lead this country, even though she has been so much closer to the office?
Well, that's a great question. And let me begin by answering it.
Even Marco knows, like.
This election is about the future, about what kind of country this nation is going to be in the 21st century. This election is actually a generational choice, a choice about what kind of nation we will be in the 21st century. For over 2.5 centuries, America has been a special country. The one place on earth where anyone from anywhere can achieve anything. A nation that's been a force for good on this planet. But now, a growing number of Americans feel out of place in their own country. We have a society that stigmatizes those that hold cultural values that are traditional. We have a society where millions of people, are living paycheck to paycheck. They're working as hard as they ever have, but they're living paycheck to paycheck because the economy has changed underneath their feet. We have young Americans who owe thousands of dollars in student loans for a degree that doesn't lead to a job. For the first time in 35 years, we have more businesses dying than starting. And around the world, every day brings news of a new humiliation for America. Many, the direct consequence of decisions made when Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of the United States. And so here's the truth. This election is about the future. And the Democratic Party and the political left has no ideas about the future. All their ideas are the same tired ideas of the past. More government, more spending. For every issue before America, their answer is a new tax on someone and a new government program. This nation is going to turn the page. And that's what this election should be about. And as I said at the first debate, if I am our nominee, they will be the party of the past. We will be the party of the 21st century.
And Maria, I will note, she's got a lot of experience, but her policies have proven disastrous. If you look at foreign policy, every region on the world has gotten worse. Under her leadership, we abandoned the nation of Israel. Under her leadership, radical Islamic terrorism has been on the rise. Under her leadership and Obama's leadership, Iran is getting $100 billion and on the verge of getting a nuclear weapon. Everything she's put her hand to is touched. And when we talk about the cronyism of Washington, Hillary Clinton embodies the cronyism of Washington. And I'll give you an example of that, which is the congressional exemption from Obamacare, which is fundamentally wrong. And I'll tell you this, if I'm elected president, I will veto any statute that exempts members of Congress. The law should apply evenly to every American.
All right, I think it's fair to say you're not fans of Hillary Clinton's resumes. All right, Mr. Trump.
We are not.
I had a feeling. As perhaps the most successful capitalist on this stage tonight, you've acknowledged that some give capitalism a bad name. You've been particularly critical of businesses that find all sorts of ways of paying their taxes by keeping money abroad. But your own plan includes an incentive to bring that more than $2 trillion home. Isn't that like a one-time bounty?
No.
Some of the guys you all but call pirates, so they still keep the loot and pay only a small price to bring it back.
Well, what's happening right now, Neil, is something that has not been a subject of conversation by politicians, as primarily the only politician, I guess, other than Carly on the stage. They haven't talked about corporate inversion. Now, corporate inversion, companies are leaving. You know, we used to leave New York to go to Florida. We got better taxes. We got maybe something else. Now they're leaving the United States to go to other countries. They have trillions of dollars in those other countries. They're going for two reasons. They can't get their money back in. It's something where the Democrats and the Republicans both agree. It's the only thing I can think of. They both agree. Let the money come back in. 3.5 years, they still can't make a deal. They can't get the money in. It's probably $2.5 trillion, but I think it's much more than that. All of that money could come right in and be used to rebuild our country and investments in our country. They can't do it. What we have to do, and what I've done, is made the tax rate, and one of the reasons they don't bring it in, the tax is so obnoxious, they can't do it. I made it a 10% number, as you know. I've been very highly praised for it. A lot of money's going to come back in. We're going to get rid of the bureaucratic problems and roadblocks, because that's also a problem. And we're going to have all of this money pour back into the United States. It's going to be used to build businesses, for jobs, and everything else.
Glad you put the light up.
And as I say, my expression
kind of
is, let's make America great again.
I could put that on at like
Senator
9
Paul,
o'clock.
you were one of
In the
15
morning.
Republicans
If
to
the window was
vote for an
closed.
amendment
Oh, really?
which states that
Actually,
human
it was
activity
it was like
contributed
7.
to
I just
climate
opened up. I was
change.
like, computer.
President
Like,
Obama has announced an
that's a
aggressive
keyword.
plan to cut carbon emissions. At the same time, energy production in America has boomed. Is it possible to continue this boom and move toward energy self-sufficiency while at the same time pursuing a meaningful climate change program?
The first thing I would do as president is repeal the regulations that are hampering our energy that the president has put in place, including the Clean Power Act. While I do think man may have a role in our climate, I think nature also has a role. The planet's 4.5 billion years old. We've been through geologic age after geologic age. We've had times when the temperature's been warmer. We've had times when the temperature's been colder. We've had times when the carbon in the atmosphere has been higher. So I think we need to look before we leap. Presidents often fond of saying he wants a balanced solution. But really, we do need to balance both keeping the environment clean. We will have some rules for that. We got to balance that with the economy. He's devastated my state. I say the president's not only destroying Kentucky, he's destroying the Democrat Party down there because nobody wants to associate with him. So what we really need is somebody that understands that we do need energy of all forms. And that means we will have solar and wind and hydro, but we will still have coal and we still will have natural gas. And we've got to have an all of the above policy. But it would be a mistake to shut down all of our industries in the coal fields and shut down the coal-powered plants. If we did so, we're going to have a day where we wake up and some of our big cities are either very cold or very hot. So I think it's a big danger and we shouldn't do it. And what we should do is say we want all of the above. We want to free up the energy sector and let people produce, let them drill, let them explore.
Maria, critically, when it comes to climate change,
We had a 10% reduction in carbon emissions because of Solyndra. It isn't because of the central planners in Washington, D.C. It's because we've had a great American success story. The explosion of natural gas. Taking two existing technologies and applying it through innovation has created lower carbon emissions, lower energy costs. 40% of all the economic activity in the age of Obama has come from the energy sector, and Hillary Clinton wants to suppress that. I think we ought to be expanding this. High growth is the path to lower carbon and more jobs. I know for a fact, as governor of the state of Florida, we created the largest land purchasing programs and environmental cleanup programs because we had a growing economy. Our revenues were growing at 4.4%. It allowed for resources to be able to protect the natural systems. We got to get to a conservation environmental policy that goes beyond just carbon.
All right, I know you want to talk, and I didn't want to talk, but we also promised to get people home tonight, and we are going to take a quick break here. I think it is fair to say at this juncture that you can discuss business issues.
All right, let's break.
Let's go keep it.
Sign out. Ooh, it's even less.
Oh, I thought it was like 11 minutes.
Welcome back to the Republican presidential debate.
She put the grades on for the
It's time for your closing
Really?
statements.
What'd you get?
You get
96.
30 seconds
Really?
each.
Yeah, I was kind of
And
hyped they did it
Senator
like all the night
Paul,
before.
we will begin with
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully she doesn't watch this
We're the
whole thing.
richest
And,
humanitarian nation in the history of mankind.
That was a good essay,
But
though.
we also borrow $1 million a minute. And the question I have for
Well,
all
wait,
Americans
that's
is think
is that
about
right?
it. Can you be a
That's
fiscal
statistically, yeah.
conservative if you don't conserve all of the money?
That's actually
If you're
crazy.
a profligate
Do you
spender,
know how much
you
$1 trillion
spend money
is?
in
$1 trillion
I know.
is 1,000
for the
billion.
military.
In order to count
That's
to, if you counted to $1 billion
You
starting
have
now,
to
it
be
would take you
conservative
22
with
years.
all
Yeah.
spending,
Did
domestic
have I shown you
spending
the video where
and
the guy
welfare
is
spending.
Yeah,
I'm the
yeah.
only fiscal
At the end of the video, I'm going to
conservative
finish
on
off with that
stage.
video myself.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Kasich.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders were to win this election, my 16-year-olds, I worry about what their life is going to be like.
I think they're closing
You
out.
know, the conservative movement is all about opportunity. It is about lower taxes, it's about balanced budgets,
I wouldn't be
it's
concerned
about
about
less
kids
regulation,
soldiers.
and it's about
Under-
sending
like
power,
Sanders and
money, and
Clinton will be
influence
better.
back to where we live so
So
we
we
can
think that
run
Clinton
America
Sanders
from
would
the
be better
bottom
for the
up.
future.
I don't know about
In
Clinton,
addition
but
to that,
Sanders,
once
like
we have
Sanders,
the
I feel
power
like
and the
is
money and
better
the
than
influence with
kids.
programs we shift
See, I
out,
think
then
I
each
think
of us
Casey,
have a
I think this is
responsibility
where
to reach out
it
and
literally
to
comes down
rebuild
to
our
ideology.
families, make them
Like,
stronger, and connect
Sanders
our
at his heart is
neighborhoods.
a
All that
socialist. He
together,
believes that
wealth,
if you
connection, family,
take a big
America's
government,
greatest days are ahead. We
pump a
must
bunch of money
win
into it,
this
and
election.
then the government pumps money back out, it'll all work itself out.
Carly Fiorina.
And he thinks that you can do.
Imagine a Clinton
In my
presidency.
opinion,
Our military
he's
will
kind of an
continue
idealist.
to
He's not a
deteriorate.
not a
Our
big
veterans
realist.
will not be
He-
cared
he-
for. And no, Mrs.
a lot of the
Clinton,
things he says are
that
great.
situation is
Yeah, I'd
not
love to go to
exaggerated.
college for free.
The
And
rich
I'd
will
love
get
to see a
richer.
nice, clean
The poor will get
earth.
poorer.
But I doubt
The
that'll
middle
happen.
class will
You
continue
know,
to
honestly,
get
at the end of the
crushed.
day,
And
like,
as bad as that picture
you know,
is, what's
it
even
comes down to
worse
numbers, and
is
I
that
don't
the Clinton
think
presidency
Bernie
will
Sanders is really
corrode
crunching
the
the numbers
character
like
of this
he says he
nation.
is.
Why? because
Makes
of the
sense, yeah.
Clinton way.
Kasich
Say whatever you
also
have to. Lie
is
as
probably the
long as
most
you can get
realistic
away
one
with
up
it.
there on the
We
Republican
must
ballot.
beat
He's
Hillary
only
Clinton.
talking about
Carly
currency.
Fiorina
The
can
whole
beat
time.
Hillary Clinton. I will
And all
beat
he ever talks about
Hillary
during the debate
Clinton,
is
and
how he's
under
going to
a
balance the
President
budget. And to me, I
Fiorina,
think that's like
we will restore
super
the character
important.
of this nation,
And I think that's
the
really
security
the
of this
only way
nation,
that you can
the
ensure a safe
prosperity of
future.
this nation.
And he,
Because
you know,
as citizens,
he's just got one
we
goal, and I
will
think he
take
can't
our
achieve that.
government back.
Donald Trump is talking about 6 things at once: building a border, building our military. He claims he has a good tax code. I doubt it if you're talking
Jane
about
Horton
those
is
two
sitting
things.
with my wife here today. Her
Jeb
husband,
Bush
Chris,
is
was
bought
killed
out
in
by
action in
everyone.
Afghanistan.
Yeah. It's like, why is he
And
running?
Jane spends her time now defending and fighting
Well,
for
it's
military
just
families. They're both heroes.
he was
I
going to
don't
run
think we
before
need an
George.
agitator in chief or
It's
a
like
divider in chief.
Jeb
We need a
Bush.
commander
When
in
I see
chief
Jeb
that
Bush,
will
I just see the
rebuild our
face of a bunch of
military
different corporations
and restore
in the
respect
one,
to our veterans
into
by
one, you know,
revamping and fixing
Hydra.
a broken
Like,
veterans
I don't see
administration.
a real
That's my
person.
pledge to you.
Yeah.
I ask for your support.
The only thing that makes him slightly human is the fact that his wife is Latino,
Ted Cruz.
and so that's why he was in
58
favor
years ago,
of
my father fled Cuba.
you know,
As he stood on the
amnesty
deck
and
of
not
that ferry
super
boat
like,
with the wind and salt air blowing,
you know, he isn't
he looked
anti-illegal
back at the
immigrant.
oppression
You know,
and
most
torture
Republicans
he
are.
was escaping.
But even then, he started to change his
And yet he
policy when
looked
his polls went
forward
down.
to the
So you know,
promise
where is
of
his
America.
integrity?
His
Ted
story is
Cruz,
our story.
he's
What
got great
ties
quotes, but
Americans
honestly,
together is we
sometimes
are
like
all the
you can
children
just be a little
of
bit
those
too
who
like
risked everything
religious, like
for freedom.
I mean, yeah, religion
America
plays
is
a
in
big
crisis
part in the
now.
United
I
States, but
believe in America.
yeah,
And
there
if we
are
get
Muslims
back
in this
to the
country.
free market
I'd
principles
be a
and
little
constitutional
nervous if someone
liberties
like him
that
kept
built this
saying
country, we can turn
the
this
Bible
country
is the
around.
world, is
I
the word of the
believe
law.
that 2016 will be an election like 1980, that we will win by following Reagan's admonition to paint in bold colors, not pale pastels. We're building a grassroots army. I ask you to join us at tedcruz.org, and we the people can turn this
I got
nation.
a .org. I don't play all the .org.
Senator Marco Rubio.
The story of America is an extraordinary story. It is the story of a nation that for over 2 centuries, each generation has left the next better off than themselves. But now, because Washington is out of touch, through the fault of both political parties, for the first time in our history, that is in doubt. And that is what this election must be about, because if the next 4 years are anything like the last 8 years, our children will be the first Americans ever left worse off by their parents. This election is about making a different choice, about applying our principles of limited government and free enterprise to the unique issues of our time. And if we do, we will not just save the American dream, we will expand it to reach more people and change more lives than ever before. And the 21st century can be a new American century. So tonight, I ask you for your vote. And I ask you to join us at my website, marcorubio.com.
Even he understands how funny it sounds.
Yeah.
Dr. Ben Carson.
BenCarson.com.
In the 2 hours of this debate, 5 people have died from drug-related deaths. $100 million has been added to our national debt. 200.
I'm one of them.
And 2 veterans
dies on the spot.
have taken their lives. This is a narrative that we can change. Not we the Democrats,
Or you just do a ton of heroin on stage, like,
but we the people of America.
we gotta legalize
because there is something
marijuana.
special
We gotta
about this
legalize
nation.
heroin.
And we must
Yeah.
embrace it and be proud of it and never give it away for the sake of political correctness.
But he says it with this blandness.
Donald Trump.
Thank you.
Trump didn't talk at all.
Over the years, I've created tens of thousands of
Didn't give him a lot of
jobs in a
questions.
great company.
No.
It's a company I'm very proud of, some of the most iconic assets anywhere in the world. And I will tell you, I don't
know
have
this
to
company
give you a
does.
website because I'm
Trump?
self-funding
Yeah, what do
my
they- what do they
campaign.
do?
I'm
Trump,
putting up my own money.
is a
I want to do something
multi.
really
He's a
special.
billion-dollar
I want to make our
conglomerate.
country
Like, he
greater
uses
than
a
it's
lot
ever
of,
been. I think we have
Here's
that
the thing. He
potential.
started off with a lot of money,
We
right?
cannot lose this election.
Then,
We
I don't know what he did
cannot
with it,
let
but then he
Hillary
bought out a
Clinton,
bunch
who is
of
the
real
worst
estate in New
Secretary
York.
of State
Okay,
in the
New York
history of
City,
our country,
Manhattan Island.
win
Have you ever heard
this
of Trump
election.
Towers?
Yeah.
We
He
will
owns
fight,
them.
we will win,
Okay,
and
they're
we truly
super,
will
wait,
make this
super
even
Is that
more
luxury
special.
apartments
We have
in
to
Oh,
make better
Manhattan.
than
alright, I thought
ever
Trump
before,
Towers
and I will
was
tell
where
you,
they did the
the
business.
United States can
He
actually
also
be
has a big
better
business. He has
than
Trump
ever
ties. He has
before.
Trump. He has
Thank you.
Trump everything. Like he is a like. That's the thing. He's a billionaire. He has money to
Candidates, we want to
spend
thank
to
you
make more
all.
business. He's the
We
definition
also
of a
appreciate your
capitalist.
helping
You know,
save
like,
time by talking over one another at times. That was welcome.
and he's a good capitalist
By
too.
all
Like
means, it was
he's
a
not
very
like,
riveting debate. Business
I'm not even talking
understanding
down about him
can
for
be
that
riveting.
reason. Like he's
Because it
rich
wasn't
and he's
about
making
us.
more money and getting
It's
richer,
about them.
and by doing so, he's
That'll
employing
do
more
it.
people.
Thank you again.
He made a TV show with himself. You know, he's a celebrity.
All right, it's over.
I was told when I went to booth after booth that there are two.
All right. Well, I guess
Bye.
that's it. Goodbye.
Oh wow, it's kind of dark in here now.
Yeah.
As it's in and out of focus. We should do a
Whatever.
counter. All right, bye.